All right. For anybody who has an interest in the golf swing, what happens, why it happens, whether you're a new coach to the game, whether you've been in it for years, or whether you're just a golfer and you want to know more, then this is a really, really informative, educational, and interesting, and just all around very cool show. Because my guest today is one of the foremost coaches in the country that is staying on top of the scientific side of golf through all the research and development that's coming out of the scientific world. His name is Michael Finney. He is a top 100 coach. And although I've never met Michael in person, after following him for quite some time on social media and watching some of his talks, reading a lot of things online that he either debated with others or was defending his position, I thought that I've really got to have him on the show, and at some point I got to meet him and sit down and have a beer, because we blew through 2.5 hours in today's show like it was 2.5 minutes. And whether you agree with Michael or not, there's one thing that you have to respect, and that is his passion for defending his position and his desire to continually learn and improve, which is why he stays in constant contact with some of the brightest researchers in the game today. People like Dr. Sasha McKenzie, people like Dr. Phil Cheatham, or many years ago, and still doing research in the golf, Dr. Stephen Nesbitt. So Michael sheds a lot of light on his theories. Was happy to bring those forward in today. And really, part of that theory is focusing on three aspects that he says have the greatest effect on somebody's game. And that would be how your feet are reacting with the ground, how the club face is reacting with the ball, and most importantly, how your hands are reacting with the handle, the forces, the torques, the face control, and so on, and how those things can either help your game and or hurt your game. So just, again, a very cool show. You're really going to enjoy listening to him if you haven't heard it before. I will have the link to Michael's educational review that he did a few years ago with Chris Como, Joe Mayo, and Doc Sasho. It's an education review on the golf swing kinematics seminar. I will have the link to that webpage and that video in the summary, so anybody can check that out. I would highly, highly recommend you do so. So, as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's discussion with top 100 coach, Mr. Michael Finney. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. Hey everybody, I want to give a big shout out to a new sponsor of the Golf 360 podcast, and that's Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms and their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model that's also often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns and little attention. At Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts, not just advisors, who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Call Affinity Wealth today for a no-cost consultation with one of their experts at 724-754-8200. Again, that's 724-754-8200. Or you can also check them out on the web at www.affinitywealthmg.com. That's AFFINITYWEALTHMG.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. All right, I'm very, very happy to introduce and have on the show Mr. Michael Finney. Michael, thank you for making the time this evening to come on. It's going to be fun.
Pete, I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. You know, as we were talking before we came on, if I can let everybody know, you know, I was getting back into teaching and just looking at who I wanted to have come on the show. I follow Instagram, YouTube, like everybody does nowadays, but I went back to chat rooms, and that's where I really saw your name stick out, because you didn't take any shit, and I'm like, I like this guy. I got to have this guy on the show and have a chat with him, because and it just wasn't that you didn't take any shit. It was you were very well educated. You were able to speak your position without tearing somebody else down, but respectfully saying, no, here's where you're wrong, and then here's where I think you're going wrong. So I'm really excited to have you on it, and I'm sure everybody's anxious to hear what you have to say about the game. So it's going to be a fun evening.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I appreciate the nice words.
So before we get into a lot of your history and your ideas on the golf swing, the Ryder Cup's coming up, and that's on everybody's radar right now. And everybody has their opinion, so I want to ask yours as well. Why do you think that the U.S. team has struggled for the last 2 to 3 cups in doing what on paper, you know, and I always say, well, the paper's about as good as the stuff you wipe your rear end with. That's paper. Why do you think they've struggled so much over the last couple of events?
Well, I definitely was not prepared for that question, but let me think.
But not to throw you under the bus right out of the gate.
No, you're fine. It sure does seem to me over the last, 20, 30 years of watching the Ryder Cup, the team that putts the best under pressure seems to win. They all hit some pretty good shots. And, I mean, boy, it really seems like the European squad has pulled the bigger putts coming down the stretch every year, with a few exceptions, obviously. But so it always helps to have some good putters on the team, and guys that can perform under the gun. That, and this might be cliche, but it seems like team chemistry plays a role, and guys that enjoy each other and play hard for each other. Which maybe you could say that might be a strike against the upcoming U.S. team, unless some of the guys sort of bury the hatchet and get along a little bit better. But so between team chemistry of the Europeans and their putting prowess, it seems like that's been the recipe for the Europeans to kind of give us a bunch of lessons in the Ryder Cup over the past 20 years. So. But yeah, that's a pretty overall look at it. But that seems to be the dividing point.
If you were Steve Stricker, how would you go about handling the we'll call it friction among some of the members on the team?
Wow! Again, that's Steve Stricker probably knows a lot more about captaining the team than I would. But how long ago was it? Was it at Oakland Hills when Phil and Tiger got paired together?
Absolutely.
Thought that was an idea, or some people thought it was a great idea. A lot of people thought it was a bad idea, and it didn't turn out all that great. So I don't know about the pairing Brooks and and Bryson together is the greatest idea. So I'd probably keep those guys apart and and just try to find some good combinations. I mean, shoot, we've got some great players. I mean, Daniel Berger's a great player. I mean, obviously they're all great to be on the team, and Steve Stricker, obviously, it's the most second-guessed golf position in all of time to be a Ryder Cup captain on the losing side. All you are is second guessed. So, but if you win, all the second guessing goes away, and they say, "Hey, pat you on the back." And so it's a pretty tough job. And actually, one of my teammates at LSU, David Toms, I was hoping over the past 10, 15 years he would have gotten a look at being a captain since he won PGA championship, but he never quite got that spot. I think Tom Watson maybe got that spot that maybe he could have had a chance to get way back when, and then Tom lost. But Steve Stricker is, had a great career, probably arguably better than David's, and him being such a great champion, I'm sure he'll do a great job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he might
captain.
still get his shot.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
You're very well read, very well educated. Not afraid to speak your mind when it's something you're passionate about. Does that come from your desire to continue to learn and improve, or is that a personality trait? Where do you think that comes from?
That's a good question. My father was a sports writer, started in 1945, and he retired in 2013, and he passed away a few years ago. But he wrote sports for 68 years, and he had a column for a bunch of those years. And he was in New Orleans. That's where I grew up, in New Orleans. And he was paid to have an opinion on the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Jazz. Pistol Pete Maravich was there, and just national sports. He covered Final Fours, Super Bowls, all the biggest boxing matches. He covered everything, and so he was paid to have an opinion. And so maybe I got a little bit of that, from my dad. But my dad was a lot less argumentative than maybe I am. I'm definitely maybe on the other end of that. My father was he wasn't a shock jock. He didn't try to get people up in arms. He gave his opinion. He tried to back it up, and he was pretty well respected, and that's why he lasted so long in the business. But I think maybe I got a little bit of his taking a side from him, but then just being in the golf business, and I grew up with a guy he was a little bit older than I am. You may know his name. His name's Brian Manzella. A golf teacher in New Orleans, and he was a pretty opinionated guy. And he and I, we talked golf swing mechanics from, I met Brian probably in 1980, and we were pretty good buds through 2015-ish. And so that's 35 years of talking about golf swings, and we would go to all the PGA teaching seminars and all the big and small and medium sized seminars where guys and girls would sit around and talk about golf swing and teaching the game. And we were involved with the Golfing Machine, and Ben Doyle. We were really good friends with Ben Doyle, who was the first authorized instructor of the Golfing Machine. And so, we took a lot of arrows because we were Golfing Machine guys, and a lot of people were trying to pick it through the years. And so I think maybe, having a lot of incoming, we probably had a lot of outgoing because of that. And, things have evolved. As far as I'm concerned, things evolved for me in around 2005, moving away from the Golfing Machine framework and moving on to other things. And I kind of maybe kept that edge. And I really, and people ask me this, not all the time, but occasionally, like what you just asked me, where do I get this debating, argumentative style? I think it's really because I want to know the truth. I want to understand the golf swing at its most basic level. And, physics and biomechanics and mechanical engineering seem to be the disciplines that kind of describe what the club and what the body are doing the best. And so there's a lot of cut and dried concepts and principles in those fields. And I love when people take those sciences and apply it to the golf swing. And then hopefully we can all kind of agree, hey, this is kind of what's happening. And then you can customize it as a teacher from there. But there's people that want to fight physics. They want to they want to make up their own physics. They want to make up their own biomechanics, and that's when I get into discussions, debates, whatever you want to call it, with people that really just want to say, hey, this is the way, this is what's happening. And I'm like, well, that has no basis in anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's and golf instruction business is filled with this. I would 98% of the golf instruction business is filled with jargon that has no basis in any science. And 2% maybe, and maybe it's heading to 3% now and 4% later. And I'm trying to bring that 2, 3, 4% to the forefront. I don't get everything right. I don't understand it as well as obviously the researchers do, but I'm trying to get more of that good information out to the masses of teachers and of students as best I can. And I feel like I'm that's what I've been doing for 15, 16 years, and I'm going to continue to do it as long as I'm a golf teacher, which probably will be for the rest of my life. So that's what I do, and that's what I enjoy doing, and that's just who I am.
Jason Sutton, the golf guru, he was on the
Sure.
show a couple months ago, and we were talking about you guys, what you mentioned with uh, the the Alpha Wars, I guess is what it
Yeah.
was called, right?
Sure.
And
Right.
I would have to assume as I watch this from afar that, and it's unfortunate that I think you and Brian had a bit of a falling out over some differences on that thing, but and I
Right.
don't want to go down that road. No, it's
No.
no one else's business. But what was getting at was I think that what you guys are doing, even the extensive costs that it's been on some of you, is a very good thing for the game because you're each side, whether it's realized or not, is pushing each other to better the game, and it's almost like, well, if you take the Tiger Phil thing, and you look at the evolution of their careers, where we go back to like we were talking about at the Oakland Hills Ryder Cup, where they really did not care for one another, and I think that was pretty obvious to everybody. But now is there elder statesman to the game? It's like, who are you going to talk to that
Right.
that understands very similar things that you went through and experienced? The sacrifices, the hard work, the difficulties in winning multiple major champions, of being the face of U.S. golf, and so I mean, as a coach and an instructor and someone who wants to learn more, I applaud what you're doing. Although I wish it wasn't as heated, but I get that. I have friends who I've gotten in heated discussions with. We didn't agree, but I think you guys are doing a lot of good for the game. I think it would be nice if somebody could pull together, so long as it remained respectful, because I know passions and emotions get involved, especially when they're friends. Is somewhat of a debate or a series of debates that one group could go and debate the other.
Yeah.
Maybe that would. I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to go down a road to spur
No,
on
no.
arguments or anything.
Well, no, no let me offer just a real quick comment on that. It's so again, Brian Manzella and me, Mike Finney, and Michael Jacobs, who's Brian Manzella's partner and
Mm-hmm.
Jacobs 3D, whatever. We're golf teachers, and the the roadblock is, unfortunately, that Michael Jacobs and to a lesser extent Brian Manzella think that they're researchers, they're PhD researchers, and they're not.
Right.
So my contention all along was this whole whatever how many years it's been now, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it's been, is could have been condensed into 15 minutes of Sasha McKenzie and Stephen Nesbitt, the mechanical engineer that they base Jacobs 3D on. If they sat in a room, maybe throw Young Kwan into the room as a tiebreaker, put those three guys together in a room, and go over Dr. Nesbitt's data and go over Sasha's data and go over Dr. Kwan's data, and we can figure this out in literally 15 minutes. It
Mm-hmm.
could be a measurement error. It could be just an overall approach error, or why they're seeing things so differently. And but for whatever reason, Dr. Nesbitt doesn't never wanted to do that. And I asked for that to happen about 1,600 times over the last 8 years. And it was never, they would always say, well, get smarter, Sasho and Quan need to be smarter. And because Dr. Nesbitt figured out something they couldn't figure out. And that's not the way this works. Dr. Nesbitt writes a paper. Sasho and Young Kwan look at it, they peer review it, and they say, looks good, or hey, he might have done better here, he could have done this there. And you published all these papers, and so Dr. Nesbitt not wanting to sit down to talk face to face or on a Zoom chat with Sasho and Dr. Kwan, and there are other guys, not just those two, that could sit down and talk to him about this stuff. That has been the entire problem. And it's not really how science works. I mean, I think, you build on top of each other, and you say, at one point, Dr. Nesbitt and Sasha were communicating before Michael Jacobs knew who Stephen Nesbitt was. And so anyway, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but if they had gotten into a room 6 years ago, Brian Benzella and I would probably not have had a falling out, over all this junk. They were trying to act like they understood the science behind Dr. Nesbitt's data collection from 1995 until 2000 with the USGA. And they're golf teachers like I am. They have undergraduate at most understanding of physics, college undergraduate, maybe high school physics understanding. So for them to kind of say that they understand exactly what Dr. Nesbitt did is disingenuous, and it's on its face, it's a farce. I mean, it's for those guys to be able to speak on his behalf is laughable. I mean, they're just not capable of doing it. They're smart guys. They're not capable of speaking on Dr. Nesbitt's behalf, at least in a discussion with Sasha McKenzie and Dr. Pond. So anyway, yeah. So that's my 2 cents on that. That was a little bit long winded, but I mean, we're not even talking about what the debate was about, and that is more important to me. What we're talking about, how we speed the club up and how we slow it down. Boy, I think we should understand that as golf teachers as best we can, and we've had a 7-year argument about it. So anyway. We didn't cover any golf instruction right there, but anyway, I wanted to make sure everybody understood that was asked of Dr. Nesbitt, and he turned us down, or Jacobs turned us down on behalf of Dr. Nesbitt.
So. Maybe if I can get the podcast growing enough and it gets enough exposure, I can have them on and then bring everybody together and sit down and all right, guys, let's talk about this, because everyone here is very smart. It might just be a semantics thing. It might be a misunderstanding. Sure. It might be something, because everybody's looking at it at such an intense level that maybe everybody's overlooking maybe the simplest thing that's sitting right under your nose. And then it's like this big,
you know what?
Right?
It's 26-year-old data. And it might be as simple as when they try to get accelerations of the golf club, it gets messed up because you need some frames after impact, and the shock of impact makes the data it's like time shifts the data, and it might be as simple as that. They thought something was happening because impact,
there's a loss of energy at impact.
Well, yeah, impact is so violent. The frames of data that they needed after impact were so crazy out of whack. It ended up time shifting the accelerations, and it made it look like the golfer was doing something that he wasn't doing, and they interpreted it that way. So it could be something as simple as that. But again, Dr. Nesbitt and Sasha could work that out in literally 15 minutes if Dr. Nesbitt wanted to be really transparent about his data collection, or maybe it's something else. But those guys have blocked it at every turn, and they've always said, well, Dr. Nesbitt doesn't want to get into those types of discussions. Well, then if he doesn't want to get into those types of discussions, then what's happened is a result. We're arguing about whether the golfer is, making the club, torque, positively torque or negatively torque down by the ball. And this is kind of something I definitely wanted to mention to you. I'm going on a little bit here, but there are a lot of teachers that I respect, that I talk to, uh, a lot, a handful of teachers I respect and talk. They're always saying, Mike, what does it matter? What's it matter that what happens in the last 0.02 seconds of the swing right before impact? Can the golfer really control that anyway? And my argument would be, well, first, let's understand exactly what's happening better. And that's the argument, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
debate we've been having. And after we get that on the same page, then we can use it to apply maybe in golf lessons. And I think there are practical applications of all of this stuff. And for the people that tell me that, people that I respect that teach golf on a daily basis, what's it matter? What do you need to understand that for? Well, what did we need to understand ball flight laws for? We didn't understand them 20 years ago. Nobody did. Don't let anybody tell you that they did. They didn't know them near as well as we understand them now. But there were probably 20 years ago people saying, what do we really need to know that for?
Right. It's
So
like you
if
don't know what you don't know.
exactly, you need to know this stuff in its most simplistic form, so then you can make it practical for your student. And when we look back in 20 years, we can say, wow, I did not teach that kid to push his right hand up against his left thumb through the ball. I allowed his right hand to come off his left thumb right near impact. But I did that because I knew that was a form of him allowing the club to not slow down quite as much if he left that hand intact up against his left thumb. It's just an example. I mean, so it's like, okay, Phil Mickelson and Vijay Singh's hand comes off their lead thumb,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody taught that out of them, thank goodness, or maybe they wouldn't have been as good as they were. So that's one small example. I use it a lot, of kind of specific to the debate that we're having. But the more I understand about the physics and biomechanics of the golf swing, the less I the more I understand, the better my teaching gets, and the less intrusive I get into people's swings. Because wow, that's that person's way of letting the club speed up as much as possible, and it doesn't seem to bother his dispersion too much. It doesn't look orthodox, but I'm not going to teach it out of him because I may ruin the guy.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from with all this stuff. I want to learn more so I don't screw people up, if that makes any
It
sense.
makes a lot of sense, especially
Yeah,
from somebody who stands on the side of the ball that you and I stand on, and a lot of other coaches out there. That how can I improve what I know so that I can become the most efficient possible? Identify what the person needs as specifically as I can, so that I'm not sending them down some road that we're going to have to come back on and then go a different direction. I mean,
a
I
hundred
think I
percent.
think that's what most teachers, at least people I talk to and have had on the show, it seems to be a general consensus, and maybe it's just a trait that people have that drives them into teaching and coaching.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're the next 100 golfers that I see, I want to help. 70% of them. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I'm helping 68% right now. Maybe I'm 59, whatever. I just want the next 100 golfers. I want to help one more on their way to enjoying the game, and because I know I don't help 100 out of 100, and I'd like to think I help more than one out of 100. So I'm just trying to up my percentage as I go. And the best way for me to get better, I think, is to learn more about what we just talked about, the physics, biomechanics, and the mechanical engineering part of looking at the golf swing.
What was the attraction to the scientific side of instruction?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, again, when I was in high school, I remember Kelly Gibson, who played the PGA
Mm-hmm.
Tour in New Orleans, way back when. I remember him coming up to me at Lakewood Country Club, where they used to play the tour event. I was working out there one summer. I was like parking carts, and and he came up to me and said, "Oh no, you want to get your right elbow in front of your belly button." And I remember posing that position. And he was already a pretty good player at Lamar, and I was a decent high school player. And so that was my first real golfing machine position that I was ever shown. That was probably like 1982 or three. And then Brian Manzella got the book in the early 80s, and then ended up going to see Ben in 86 or 7 while I was at LSU. And Brian came back. I introduced Brian to David Toms in Baton Rouge, and Brian started working a little bit with David. And then Brian and Mike Perpich was another golf machine instructor. They were around the LSU golf team, and so the golf machine started to kind of filter into what I was doing in college through Manzella, and then right at the end of my college stay at LSU in 1990, I went out to see Ben Doyle. I think Brian might have gone with me that first time. No, I went out with my brother Tim in 1990, and then I got to meet Ben Doyle in 1990. And after that, Brian, me, and Ben, we would hang around Ben at the PGA teaching and coaching summits. And so, Brian and I were we would walk around with Ben a bunch, and so people came to see Brian as a technical golf machine teacher, and then me. I became authorized eventually through Ben, and so anyway, obviously it looked like a scientific approach to golf, and in 2005, and this is part of the story that I just kind of alluded to earlier. In 2005, I think Brian went to a Better Golf Through Technology thing at was it MIT, I think, and Bob Grober, a physics professor from Yale, tapped Brian on the shoulder and said, "Hey, there's a mistake in every paragraph of that book." And Brian came back to the golf shop where I was working in 2005 and said, "Hey, Mike, we might need to rethink this stuff about the golf machine. All the science in it is wrong." And I'm like, "Oh, no, that can't be." And sure enough, I started opening my eyes. I called a guy like Stephen Nesbitt probably in 2006 or 7, and got to know him, and we visited with him. And then he became Manzella and Jacobs' kind of, go-to guy. And then I got to meet Sasha McKenzie and Rob Neal and Mike Duffy and Young Kwan. Over the years, Chris Como has been a big compatriot of mine. He likes to think about the mechanics of the golf swing along with 2 trillion other things. He spreads himself out. He's a golf mechanics guy for sure, and he has a great understanding of it. But he tries to be really well rounded, and I try not to be really well rounded, and that's why I kind of say that facetiously, but I know that I have one lifetime and 24 hours in a day, and I cannot be a master of the mental approach to golf. I can't be a club fitting, club building, fitness and train. I can't master all that stuff. I can't master the mechanics, but I really feel like that's the avenue I enjoy going down. How the golfer interacts with the club, how the golf club acts on the golfer. That's what kind of gets me, excited and up in the morning to kind of learn more about that. And so the scientific thing it's just, hey, when it's all stripped down, the club is a rigid body, and there's a whole branch of science, rigid body dynamics or whatever, rigid body physics, the physics of the rigid body. That's the golfer acting on the golf club, and the golf club has to do certain things because of forces and torques that we put into the handle of the club. And that's what I enjoy trying to understand. I'm about 5% into it. I got 95% to go. So, but it's great stuff, and I really enjoy looking at it.
What were some of the holes that were found out in the golfing machine? Because that was like the technical manual for quite some time.
Right. And boy, I should have done this a long time ago. I should have kind of taken a running count of all the things that were kind of bastardized in the book. But chapter 2 was written by Homer's brother, or very much written by Homer's brother, who was an engineer. Homer was an engineering aide, from what I understand, but he was a very brilliant guy. But he, the back of the book has the glossary, and he made up jargon just like, a golf pro from 1950 talking about posture, grip, alignment, made up the jargon so he could teach people. Homer made up scientific sounding jargon like power accumulator, law of the flail. All this stuff is just made up. I mean, he sat in his garage and he made it all up. And, a lot of people argue, well, words have to be made up for specific meanings. And I was like, well, but, force has a meaning, torque has a meaning, acceleration has a meaning, and so that's what sort of answer your question. I look at it, and gosh, if you can't notice that there's jargon in the golf machine, you're not alive. I mean, there's so much, power accumulators, and it's like, what did you discover? Cold fusion or something? I was like, what are you talking about? And look, I read it. 100 times. I'm an authorized instructor, or I was at some point. And so, what specifically is wrong? Well, I mean, I don't have a copy in front of me, but if I could open up a paragraph,
You could pick out pieces that
yeah,
were.
I could. So, let me see. I mean, the understanding of the ball flight laws, it took a little bit of an evolution in, the first edition through the seventh edition. The ball starts practically at right angles is pretty good. Actually, the golf machine was a lot closer to the understood ball flight laws now than a lot of things were out there. And the ball practically starts at right angles. Well, we know 75%. It starts basically 75% on the face, right, left, up and down, vertically and horizontally. So, I mean, that was close enough, but it wasn't 90 degrees to the face. It was 70, it's more like 70%, or it wasn't 100% to the face. It's more like 75%, 25% is the path. So the ball flight laws were close, but not really there. The law of the flail, I mean, the bottom lever is gonna magically kick out and line up if you have this small pulley, and that's a kind of a bastardized look of how the club gets into the position that it gets into. We're doing all of it, and forces and torques are making that club line up with our lead arm at impact. A good player that has it in the hands in front of their left pocket.
Mm-hmm.
The golfing machine turn where it's butchering things.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the first thing was like power accumulator, because I mean I wasn't any science major, but I took a number of science classes in high school and then after, and read, God, I don't know how many books on physics, and when I was doing work with golf clubs and fitting and things like that. And I'm the first time I even heard a golfing machine was in 1992, because I was interning at Sea Pines, and Don Trahan was there then, and Rick Barry, and they used to have their own mini coaching summit for the staff for Sea Pines, plantation club
Right.
in Harbortown. And that's where I heard it, and I got it. And I was a 19-year-old kid trying to read that book. I might as well have read hieroglyphics. I mean, it was. And then over the years, I kept reading it over and over. And even as I got older, I said, I've read a lot of physics stuff. I don't ever remember hearing power accumulators. So maybe it's just like high-end doctorate level stuff that I've never read.
I think a power accumulator, if you really wanted to get down to it, was a kinematic. It was a positional thing that people could accomplish, but they didn't really describe the underlying kinetics, the forces and torques behind those body parts and clubs moving the way they did. So a power accumulator was just a way that Homer said, oh, okay, well, if your left arm's across your chest, if your left wrist is cocked, and whatever he termed it. And
more kinetic
to
potential energy, right? It's more
exactly. So it was just a kinematic, a positional look at things. And he had some good stuff. I mean, alignment golf instead of alignment, what is it? He's move through positions is better than posing positions, and I think that has a lot of merit. He had some good stuff. He made a lot of it up. And I'm sorry, I should be able to come up with more examples off the top of my head, and I apologize for not being able to, because it's a big part of my mission of trying to get good stuff out there. Everybody says, well, what's wrong with the golf machine? I should have a list in front of me to read off to you. But they birthed MORAD, macro gradient research and development. MORAD birthed stack and tilt. Stack and tilt is infiltrated completely golf tech. And so you got the golf machine, MORAD, stack and tilt, and then a stack and tilt instructor. Nick Clearwater is the head of instruction for golf tech. And I have a problem with some of the things that golf tech puts out there, because it's so obviously biased toward a stack and tilt model in some respects, that you could just follow the lineage of it, from the golf machine to what golf tech does. And they are the biggest entity giving golf lessons in probably the world, definitely in the United States, in the biggest group. So it means a lot to me for golf tech to get this stuff right, because it's kind of coming from its beginnings in the golf machine, which has so much wrong in it and to it, and the jargon that's been created. And I've obviously had debates and discussions with Nick Clearwater, Andy Plummer. I've been in Mac O'Grady's presence 5 or 6 times, and I played college golf with Tommy Mudd, Jody Mudd's little brother, and Jody took lessons from Ben Doyle, from O'Grady. He's giving golf lessons today as we speak in Louisville, Kentucky, where I teach. And so, I've been around this Morad stack and tilt golf tech, golf machine stuff for a long time, and they definitely have swept out a big niche in the golf instruction business. And like you were 19 and you got some understanding of it, and it's influenced a lot of golf teachers through the years, and trying to get guys like Sasha McKenzie, Young-Hoo Kwan, Rob Neal, Mike Duffy, and their research more to the forefront as opposed to Homer Kelly's research. That's kind of, I guess, if you really put it in a nutshell, I want those guys who are actual PhDs and do actual research. I want their information to get out more than I want Homer Kelly's information to survive. I guess that would be a good way to put it.
What is Mac O'Grady doing now? He's like the
no idea.
I watched. I'm a big documentary guy, and I watched Valley Uprising was one of the first ones I saw years ago, and it was a documentary that spoke to the mountain climbing history in Yosemite National Park on El Capitan and all these mountain peaks, and I mean, from the 50s and early 60s, where you had the very technical guy, to where you had the guy who would climb and stop and drink wine while he's up halfway up this mountain, to the all the way through to the Alex Hangold, who just free climbed the whole face without any ropes or anything. But along that, they would have these side stories of these legendary guys that would just live in the park, and the park rangers could never catch him. How to eat off or survive off of butter and crackers, and I see those things, and I like nobody sees Mac O'Grady anymore, and then there's like a sighting of him, and for all he contributed, it's I just always curious to where he is, or if anybody knows what he's doing now.
I would put him in the same category sort of as Stephen Nesbitt, although Stephen Nesbitt is a hugely experienced mechanical engineer PhD, but he loves to be in the background, and he'll come out. He's done a couple of videos with Michael, and he's a great guy. I've met him, super nice guy. I respect the heck out of him, but he hides himself away, and he doesn't answer his phone anymore to inquiries from people other than Michael Jacobs. Michael and him have an agreement, I guess, financial agreement, to where it's just a one-way street where they talk back and forth to each other. And he does his thing. But O'Grady obviously has done that to himself. I mean, he's obviously, over the years, he's opened himself up to a certain group of people or individuals that have gone to kiss the ring and try to understand the golf from his perspective. And there's no denying the guy could hit the golf ball with authority, and there's no denying that he was just a talented person, right-handed, left-handed, and just dedicated his life to his mechanics of the golf swing. But I mean, watching that famous video with him in his white gym shorts and white t-shirts,
shorts.
That's all more. That's just Mac O'Grady jargon, radius locks and et cetera, all this stuff. It's just made up. Nobody. If you told somebody in Japan about a radius lock, that was trained in biomechanics, they would look at you like you had 3 heads, because they're like, well, what the hell is a radius lock? And so, Mac, they make these things up, and they have their own understanding of it, and then the person that they teach it to, he'll bastardize it and change it into something else, and that's when everything goes haywire, because there's no general understanding, definitions of the terms that they're using. And again, that's sort of what I'm trying to do. It's like, hey, let's just use plain physics terms to describe what's happening, and to other teachers, not necessarily to students. But let's understand it, better, and then we can teach it better. And right or wrong, that's what I've done. I've gotten a lot of grief from a lot of people. I've lost a couple of friends over it. It's sad to say. over some of these arguments. But I've gained some friends and I've gained some respect from people, and those are the people that I'm trying to help as best I can, because I get help from them. Sasha McKenzie and Chris Como, I would put them 1 and 1A of guys that have helped me understand the golf swing. And Chris from the teaching part end of it, and Sasha from the research and scientific part of things. And they're great guys, and I try to tout them, not toot their horn. I try to tout them every chance I get, because they're the ones that sit down and explain things to me. And Sasha more so than that. Chris is a golf teacher, but he's pretty smart, and he was on his way to getting his master's in biomechanics under Dr. Kwan, but I don't think he quite finished it. But he sure does have a really good working understanding of the biomechanics of the golf swing.
Yeah, and I've been on him. We have a number of mutual friends. I've been on him to get him on the show, and we just have not been able to.
He's a busy guy.
He's a very busy guy. Yes,
Yes,
and I say it all the time to him when I send him a message. I say, look, I get that you're going in 100 different directions. If you should come up with some time that you don't want to go to the beach or just kick back and relax and have a beer, or have the beer and just, or because he comes here. I know he was teaching one of the owners of one of the courses, I believe, and he would come here a couple times a year. I said, hey, you want to come here, have beers at the house, and I'm 15 minutes from where you're teaching. Come on over, just kick back, relax. We'll do it live, whatever you want. But love to have him on. Great guy.
He's worth talking to. I hope you can get him on. He's really good.
Science in today's world, if anybody watches the news, unfortunately, it has become such an overused word. So for somebody who understands it very well as you do, how do you differentiate, in particular, as what we were discussing, where science can get skewed amongst the industry and people who are very good at it? How do you differentiate between the science and the pseudoscience?
Well, I mean, there are peer-reviewed papers that are not real. They don't have real good science, they're and that's why they're reviewed, and if they pass enough muster, they can get published. But still, you have research papers on golf swing physics, biomechanics, that get through, but maybe aren't quite as robust as some others. So, I mean, you sort of have to kind of, as far as I'm concerned, a golf teacher, you have to read all the peer-reviewed research that's out there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that you would not believe, that gets published, that really would be tough for you to find a way to apply it to your golf instruction. But there are certain things that do get published that you say, oh, wow, that could apply. So I guess, when somebody writes an article for Golf Digest or Golf Magazine, an instruction article, I certainly don't look at that as a scientific approach to looking at the golf swing. Now, if somebody wants to, have 40 golfers hit 40 shots each and have a scientific approach to what they're doing, whether it's observational or whether it's quantitative. If somebody's asking a question and they're trying to bring the data and interpret the data, I look at that as scientific. And unfortunately for me, I've gotten to know some of these guys that actually do the research, that are trained researchers that do that. But the golf pro getting on track, man, like I could hit 100 shots tomorrow with a 7-iron and try to hit 100 draws and 100 fades. And then for me to say, I scientifically proved that a fade is more stable than a draw or whatever, that's not real science. It's science, but it's just observational. It's a very on the low end of validity, where you have a guy who knows what he's doing research wise, making sure everything is on the up and up. And basically you're trying to, what science is. You're trying to falsify your findings. You're trying to prove yourself wrong. And then sometimes you can't prove yourself wrong. You have to leave that to somebody else to prove yourself wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And science builds on that. And that's what those guys thrive on. And I wish Dr. Nesbitt would be willing to talk to the people, his peers, about, their concerns about some of his research in the past, because all we would do was benefit. Sasha would get smarter, Young Kwang would get smarter, Dr. Nesbitt would get smarter, and the guys at Ping who research golf swing and golf clubs would get smarter. And that's so I look at those guys. I look at the guys building golf balls, building golf clubs, researching, asking research questions about the golf club and the golfer. Those are the guys that I look at as practicing science as far as the golf swing is concerned. Jim McLean, bless his heart. Mike Malaska, bless his heart. Michael Jacobs, bless his heart. Uh, Sean Foley, bless his heart. Even Chris Como, bless his heart. They're not when they do a video, when they talk about a certain move in the golf swing, they're they're doing what I do. They're talking about the golf swing from a 100,000 feet level, and Sasho is going to ask the question like, why do some people swing a 5 iron 90 miles an hour and a driver 120, and then another person swings the 5 iron 85 and can swing his driver 130, and it's like why? And he can kind of take an approach and maybe look at that. Why is that happening? Jim McLean's not going to be able to do that. He can't do the science. Michael Jacobs isn't going to do that. He can't do the science. And anyway, I rambled on there. But,
It's okay.
that's kind of where I'm coming from. When you start reading about this stuff, you sort of understand, or you get an understanding of who is going down valid roads, and then who is kind of short circuiting, and then trying to get to the answer that they want to get to. The true researcher is just asking a question, and whatever the answer is, and those are the people that I tend to read most about.
Do you think the scientific language has permeated the industry a little bit too much in that, and not for coach to coach or for someone like
Right.
Doc Sasho who's doing a lecture, and that's his language, and
Yeah.
that's why he's got to get his message across. But when I see like a young assistant or a young teacher, and they're out there with Mr. and Mrs. Haverkamp, and they're talking about,
Right.
Your right elbow's going internal, it needs to go external.
Oh,
and
yeah.
too much flexion here. It's like, hey, no,
Yeah,
no. It's way over their head, and they got this glazed look over their face.
Yeah, the anatomical, the precise anatomical definitions of all the body parts moving. I'm not real good at that either. Boy, I'd love, and I need to do this more often. I need to film a 30-minute lesson of me teaching, and because I would assume that most people would think that I'm going to give out what you just talked about, all that jazz, and I'm not. I'm a person that's slicing the ball. I'm saying, hey, can you swing a little bit more to first base a little bit for me and close that face? How do you close the face? Well, you do this with your forearm. I'm definitely not saying internal, external. I'm not doing that. I dumb it down as much as I can, and I try to make it, to where the student can digest it quickly and apply it. But my understanding of why that ball might draw on the next shot, I've got a pretty good understanding of that. So, but I'm definitely not trying to impress anybody with my language when I give a golf lesson. I'm trying to get them to hit the ball better. So, but you're right. I think there might be that out there, and they're doing it for a right reason. They want to be technically correct. But sometimes, like you say, I think they kind of the message gets lost because the student's head is spinning about the second, third, and fourth word that the person said, and they might not get better as a result of it because their head is spinning. So I try to be really careful with that when I'm giving my own instruction.
I find it kind of fun that when a student will come out and they're pretty well read for, let's say, a scratch or a single digit or a 10 or 12 handicap, and they almost want to push the extent of their knowledge on you, right? They want to show you how much they know. And nowadays I'll just say, look, this rabbit hole goes pretty deep. Are you sure you want to play Alice in Wonderland? and the ones that do, I just go right to DEFCON 5 and start dropping some stuff on them, and they're like, okay, I get it.
Right.
I went a little too far.
Well, there's a couple things. I teach a lot of junior golfers, and there's some dads
Yes.
mostly dads,
The helicopter parents.
that are just, YouTube champs, and they've seen a lot of this stuff, and they have a surface understanding of what's going on, and it's kind of like their supposed common knowledge would say, if you don't line up like this, then you're not going to hit the ball there, and that's a battle on a daily basis, and you have to back people off on that and say, hey, look, there's really a lot more to it than as simply as you're kind of saying this to your son, and there's a lot more variables into it that maybe we don't need to get into right now, but let's try to get your son or daughter hitting a little bit better, and worry about how we do it, a little bit later. And then the other part is the individual student that come to me that has seen every YouTube video known to man. And shoot, the other day I got, it was a 30-minute phone call with a person I've never given a lesson to. He was interviewing me to see if I was going to be up to snuff as far as going to be to give him a golf lesson. And so he was asking me all this stuff, at the toward the end of the conversation, I finally said, "So, what type of a golfer are you?" And he's like, "Well, I'm usually, in the 90s, 95." And I'm thinking, "Wow, boy, it's like I cannot believe I went through 30 minutes of him questioning me on my understanding of the golf swing." And if this guy was a mini tour player, it'd be one thing, wanting to get better. But boy, that kind of took me by surprise. So there's a ton of information out there, and it's available at the fingertips, and so that's a constant battle. And again, what I'm doing, I tell people, I say, look, I've waded through a lot of that stuff that you've watched, and I've waded through it myself as a teacher. And we don't have to worry about it. Set your mind at ease.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot simpler than what you think it's going to be. And you know, and one of the things I did want to say, since when you invited me on, is, there's the feet interacting with the ground, there's the hands interacting with the handle of the golf club, the grip, and then there's the club hitting the golf ball, and then the ground on with an iron shot, driver off the tee, you're just hitting the ball. But so there's really 3 interaction points. Until we can bury sensors in people's muscles and everything, we're not going to get any really good data on the internal muscle firings of the body. And like some people want to go down that road, we're just not ready for it. We can't really get that data yet. But you can do pretty good, with the force plates, with the feet into the ground. We're getting a little bit better at understanding, and that's part of the argument with Nesbitt and Sasho and Young Kwan with the hands on the handle. And then TrackMan and FlightScope and Foresight have done a great job understanding at least the kinematics of impact, and the kinetics of impact we're starting to understand better. But there's really 3 interaction points in golf, the feet on the ground, the hands on the handle, and the club on the ball. And I bought a TrackMan because I wanted to understand the club on the ball as best I could, and that's a really good tool. The hands on the handle, I'm studying like a madman because that's where all of our aggregate forces from our body, that's where they're imparted to the club.
Mm-hmm.
And then the feet into the ground is super important, and people have gone crazy in the last 10 years with feet into the ground stuff, the force plates, but it's really the furthest part away from hitting the golf ball. So I start at the golf ball, and Craig Stadler, 300 pounds. Chris Patton, the guy that won the U.S. Amateur way back when, 350 pounds.
Yeah, he's a Clemson guy.
He wouldn't pass a TPI screen.
Mm-mm.
And boy, he could play some golf, and he could get that club to go through the ball the way it was supposed to do it. And obviously his hands on the handle were doing something special and good. And then the feet on the ground, everybody can speed the club up. Some are inefficient speeding up, some are really efficient. Guys that squat and jump, might be able to get a little bit more speed out to the head. But boy, reteaching somebody how to interact with the ground, that's like teaching somebody how to throw a football that's 20 years old that threw it occasionally from age 3 until 19. And everybody kind of develops a pattern. It's like, hey, I'm moving a stick really fast around my body, and your feet are going to do what they're going to do, and you can improve it a little bit, but you don't get a lot of bang for your buck. The hands on the handle, you can make a big argument that you're going to get some bang for your buck if you make some changes around the handle. And then the be all end all is what the club head is doing, through the golf ball. And if you can make changes there, then you're on to something. So that's kind of how I approach the golf swing, and trying to understand the science behind the golf swing: feet into the ground, hands to the handle, head to the ball. And if we can understand all three of those interaction points better, I think we're going to be better teachers, and then hopefully have better students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So,
No doubt about it. Let me ask you, I want to get your idea on one thing that's been talked about in golf now for some time, and that's the distance debate.
mm-hmm.
And if you read, and you're on Twitter, and a lot of people are, you read those things, and you get these different arguments. I know Scott Fawcett's been pretty active in his opinions on it, and I'm just curious to know yours, because you're, again, going back, you're very well read and you're knowledgeable about the game and the technology and everything else. What do you, if the USGA or the governing body said, we'll make you King Michael, let you make the decision, would you roll balls back? Would you curb technology, or would you just say, hey, this is like Andrew Rice told a lady, that she was arguing tech's gone too far. He said, well, did you drive here in a car? Or did you ride a horse?
Right.
Technology is not all bad.
Right.
And then,
Huge.
Right. And then you have the other side of the argument. I had Tim Morgan, who was USGA chief agronomist for 20 years on, and we agreed that said, well, nobody's really talking about the advancements in technology in the agronomy section. I mean, what they can cut grass to now is ridiculous. So what would you do if you were calling the shots?
Right. Yeah. Huge question. I'm a golf course architecture kind of buff over the years, and I really enjoy classic golf courses. And I get real sad when I see a classic golf course where you get on the green and then you walk backwards 50 yards, 75 yards to the new back tee to make the next hole 450 instead of 420 or
Right.
400. And that just ruins kind of the atmosphere of golf. And then with subdivision courses, not that big a deal because you're driving through the neighborhood to the next tee. But I really enjoy classic golf courses. You walk off the green, you walk a few yards over to the next tee, and you hit. I'm a believer of slowing the ball down to save classic golf courses. I think if you took, I've done the numbers before, but there's a small percentage, I don't know whether it's 5%, 6%, 7%, that makes sense to me to slow the ball down. The 300-yard hitter, backing him up to 275, and then the 250 hitter backing him up to whatever that would be percentage-wise. I just think we would all get used to that really fast. And I don't like bifurcation. I want everybody to play with the equipment that pros can play with, and vice versa. And I just want the ball to not go quite as far as it's going. And I think the easiest way to do that would be to do something to the golf ball. And I think the percentage decrease would be, the 200-yard guy wouldn't lose as many yards as the 300-yard guy. And I just don't, everybody's saying, oh, you can't slow that guy that hits a 200. If you slow him down, 5%, that's 190. And that's no fun for him. He would they would get used to it really fast, and play the right tees, like they've been telling us forever anyway. And so slowing the ball down, I think would solve a lot of issues. That's my simplified answer. There are so many different variables, like you say, the mowing heights of the grass, and good gracious, there's so many things. The size of the driver heads, and the forgiveness of the irons and the head. I mean, they've made golf a lot easier in a lot of respects at the high end of the game. Let's take that 350-yard drive and back it down. I guess 5%, what would that be? 17 yards. I mean, back him down 17 yards, back him down to 333 or whatever that would be, or maybe more, and maybe have some more classic courses survive, not having to put tee boxes 75 yards back of where the original tee box was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
it's not so much an answer. It's just what would you? And I think your view is a very common view. It's like we don't want the Marions and the Oakland Hills and the Oakmonts to become obsolete.
Exactly.
Now the new generation might say, okay, but we'll our, the Torrey Pines and some of these new courses that we're going to, those are going to be our classics. Like, okay, I can see
Right.
that argument, but who wants to wait 80, 90, 100 years for that to take place?
Exactly. And there's some really good comebacks to my argument for sure. And I don't discount those. I listen to them all the time, but I just feel like, I think the ball's maybe going a little bit too far, and it's so funny to watch, to see the graphs of the distance gains through the years, and people just swing at it harder. I mean, the people back in the 40s and 50s, you look at those swings, and they were tapping it out there. Now, good gracious, people are better athletes and stronger, and they're swinging out of their shoes.
That's one, right. And that's one thing I'm anxiously watching Bryson, because I know he has a very unique exercise routine, and he's doing everything he can to protect his body, but the human body is not made to torque at the levels that he's torquing it under.
No, I mean, yeah, people talk about golf and the back all the time, and I had back surgery when I was 30, and I think it's just the accumulation of golf swings over time, and then people's DNA. I think a human being's not meant to do what a golf swing asks it to do. So I mean, and then some people are more susceptible to injury than others, just the way their makeup is. And so I don't think any one type of swing is any worse or good for the back. Obviously, there's some exceptions there, but Joaquin Neiman, everybody predicting back failure for that kid, and he may never have any back issues, and then you have a guy that looks like he has a swing that's easy on his back, and he has back trouble his whole life. So I mean, it's really hard to say. I don't think we're meant to, to. That was one of the, getting off subject a little bit, but Jeff Martin and the spinal engine theory, and locking facets. If you side bend and you get supercharged, hip speed because the facets lock up, and boy, it sounds like a back injury ready to happen. I don't know if you saw that whole debate. There's this theory called the spinal engine, and this guy, Grakovetsky was his name, wrote a bunch of papers on how if you lock the facets in the lower part of the back, you can maybe you get this spring action. And some golf teachers are trying to say, hey, that's the way to do it, to turn your hips faster and turn it to be a bunch of bone. But that's another scientific. You asked earlier what's science and what's not science. You got to sift through this stuff, because there's some scientific looking stuff that really has no place in being discussed in a golf mechanics discussion. So anyway, a little bit off tangent there, but
no, I've had Dan Hellman on, who's a trainer and therapist, and he worked with a number of guys on tour, and the rumor is he was the one who really helped Tiger get his overcome his back issues. And I asked him about it, and he the type of person Dan is, he wouldn't say that if he did anyway. But there's a lot of evidence out there to say that, yeah, he is. It's just like a lot of people know, and they don't want to broadcast it.
So Chris was working with, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, I'm sure he doesn't. He's working with Tiger. Probably he's about 6 months in to working with Tiger. And I called him one night and I said, hey man, what you doing? You got time for a chat or something? And he sent me a picture, and I probably an apartment. This is before he got that house in Dallas. I don't know if this was in Florida or wherever he was. He sent me a picture of some scientific papers on the ground, on the carpet at his apartment, and literally were about 100 papers on the ground, stapled, papers that were 5 pages long, papers that were 30 pages long, and they were on the ground, kind of spread out, and none of them were on the golf swing. It was all scientific, peer-reviewed, published research on back injuries, and whatever because he was working with a guy that had a back. The entire time he worked with Tiger, his back was not feeling so good, and so he wanted to understand as best he could as a golf teacher, how the back works, and how the rotational sports affect it, And so anyway, that's just the type of guy Chris is. And when he attacks something, he attacks it. And that's those type of people. That's the people that I go to when I want to ask questions, because they think through things, and if they don't know answers, they try to go out and find them from a scientific approach. Not all those papers on the ground were good, but a lot of them were. And he sifted through it, and he did the due diligence to go after it. And I bet you he knows more about the lower back and middle back in the golf swing than anybody walking alive, because of his time with Tiger. So
yeah,
anyway,
that, and he and Hellman just did an Instagram, because I guess Chris has some shoulder injuries from a dislocation he had as a younger guy. But what Dan was saying.
Oh, is the Hellman guy the guy he did the
yes,
the little
okay. A couple of days ago that they had that Instagram live.
Whatever.
Eldoa, yes.
Yeah.
And
I know Chris loves him. Yeah.
So what Dan was saying was, and he's worked with a number of guys on tour who've had back issues. He said, look, a lot of them, or almost all of them, understand that the price to pay, or the cost of playing at that level, and the amount of practice and travel and odd beds and the speeds that they're swinging at, probably more than anything. When it comes time to pay the piper, it's back issues in older age. And
No
now
doubt.
maybe someone could argue that, yeah, but X% of the population has back issues. Like, okay, but when you're swinging at 120 to 125 miles an hour on a daily basis, that can't be good for your back overall.
No, I would say you take people that don't play golf, 100 of them, and then you take 100 guys that swing at 130 and above,
Right.
and you follow their back histories. You're probably going to find more trauma with the guys that are swinging 130 miles an hour versus the guy that going to work and sitting in his cubicle. He's probably going to have better outcome than the golfer, back wise at least. So
what are some of the theories that you have that some of your contemporaries might roll their eyes or think you're absolutely crazy?
Wow.
Because you have it might be scientific, it might have been based in the early parts of your career on the golf machine, but you've expanded that exponentially in the years you've been doing this. So as you take a look at all the things you've learned, and you develop ideas, I guess that's where that question came from. I would have to assume that you've got some ideas that you might have mentioned to someone like Chris, or pick anybody else out there that's a very good, well-respected teacher. You said, hey, here's what I got, an idea about this, and maybe they say, you got to be crazy.
Wow.
Is there anything that you might have like that? I'd have to imagine you do.
Yeah, I mean,
or maybe if you don't want, if you're waiting because it's not quite right yet.
Yeah, there's so many things.
We could have a whole nother show on that.
And then that's my son's walking in the door here. There are a ton of things that I teach that I'm like, I wonder if other people run into things that I'm running into, and the answer is inevitably yes. I mean, what I do, what you teach on a daily basis, is that correct?
Pretty close to it.
Yeah. So I mean, you're running into the same exact things that I'm running into. I mean, it's like, but sometimes we're in our little bubble and we think like, man, this issue's got to be specific to us, for me. And no, I mean, we run into the same issues. And what do I see all the time? I see a lot of left paths, a lot of open faces. I see a lot of heel strikes. I see a lot of people, really wanting to quit the game because of all that. And so what am I doing? It's like, what do I do to move that heel strike out to the center of the club, or toward the toe of the club? And, I back people away. I get people's hands to swing a little closer to their thighs on the downswing, as opposed to letting them fly out towards the ball. I mean, that seems pretty simple. I get people to sit back a little bit on their heels, as opposed to reaching over their toes to go out and get the ball. People that slice the ball, hey, the club face is open, and they think, I think you had the hack motion guy on.
Yeah, they were on last week.
Yeah, it's like you get a hat. I don't own one. It looks like a great deal. I wish I had one. You get on it at the show. You strap it on, and you move your hand, you move your wrist barely, and that little readout goes crazy. And then you look at TrackMan, and you got a guy with a zero path with a 6-degree open face, and then you think about what 6 degrees is, and you go 6 degrees. That's not that much. It's like you don't have to reinvent the wheel with somebody sometimes because, man. And we're on a podcast, we're not on a video here, but if you just barely move your wrist like this, you might get a totally different outcome. And it just boggles my mind how little of a change that some people need to get people to hit better shots. And that is totally not an answer to your question, but I'm just I'm struggling. I think some people probably, if they were to watch a golf lesson, me give a golf lesson, they would say, "Who is this guy? This guy doesn't sound at all like the guy that's arguing about the negative hands couple down by the ball
Right.
in peer-reviewed papers." Because I learn to try to keep it simple, and so that guy that's 5 degrees open at impact with a zero path, I hold up the golf club and I say, "Do you know what 6 degrees is? That's 1 second on a clock. Click, click, click. That's 1 second." And I move the club barely. I say, I'm not asking for this momentous change. I'm asking for a slight little change, and you are going to change your golf life. And this is how you do it. Your shoulder to your elbow to your wrist. Do this to the golf club. Twist it more close, and you might hit a nice little draw out there that goes 15 yards further on your next swing. And they're like, okay, I think I can do that. And so again, I didn't answer your question at all, but we sit in our little bubbles, and we think all the problems that our golfers have are unique to you or me, and they're not. We're dealing
we're
with the
teaching human
same
beings.
exact things that you are on a daily basis. And maybe as golf teachers, we need to share those experiences a little bit more, because then I think people would go, "Oh, okay, well that's what you do when you know when you're fixing a golfer." I have a young assistant that's been coming to watch me teach down at the range tee a little bit, and he's 22 years old, 21, 22 years old, and he's a part-time assistant, and he wants to get into teaching. And it's so funny because he's never heard a lot of the things that I've said before. And he's like, "Well, that makes sense. And well, that makes sense. And that makes sense." And it's like, if he watched another teacher do something totally different, what road would he go down? And I'm not saying I have the right road. I'm just saying I'm describing things to people in a way that he's never heard, because he's never heard anybody describe them. And maybe my way is a good way, and maybe he'll become a good teacher because of that. And so, again, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling, but I don't know. Golf instruction is great. It's just like solving a puzzle and trying to put people in the right positions to just enjoy the game a little bit. Hit their 7-iron 155 yards instead of 135 yards, and that's what the fun part is. So,
And it is. And I went out and when after Jason and I did his podcast a little while longer, I went out and watched him do a couple lessons, spent about half a day out there with him. And
yeah,
one of his members came in, and he was going, that guy was averaging about 4 to 6 degrees left with his driver. And 15 minutes later, the guy's 8 degrees in and out. And to the guy, it felt a little different, but not 15 degrees different. But I mean, the flight of his ball was complete. It changed his total game.
Right.
He goes from a 5 or 10 yard bleeder to now a 5 or 10 yard draw, and the distance he picked up was ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, and that's another. And I'll ask a question on your behalf, but I mean, that's another thing that I feel like the club face is like the king, and really guides my whole thing. I think people come out to you as a teacher with left paths and right paths because of one reason: the face has been skewed, their whole golfing life or their recent golfing life. And so bad club faces, overly closed faces, by God, everybody would figure out how to swing to the right. Overly open faces, yeah, you figure out how to swing it left. You figure out how to back up to your right leg on the downswing so you can make your path even more left to accommodate that open face. So, just understanding how the face opens and closes during the swing sounds so simple, but some people just don't know how to turn that dial. And I spend a lot of my time just saying, "Hey, look, this lead arm, lead wrist, lead back of the left hand, it it really controls that dial, and that is an important knob in for you to enjoy this game. And some people have a super strong grip, and they've learned how to kind of hold the face off, and they still hit cuts with super strong grips. And getting people with a more neutral grip, and then teaching them how to swivel or is it supinate their lead arm
Mm-hmm.
to make the face more closed is a game changer. And I don't know. When you get down to it, maybe the PGA of America ought to require every golf instructor to film 2 30-minute golf lessons every year and turn them into some clearinghouse so people can look at them and say, how is this? How are people fixing people? And, have a slicer and a hooker and send in 2 30-minute videos
It'd be a
and
great
maybe,
case study. I think it'd help a lot of
uh,
people.
oh, I know. And just, you know, people would figure out, okay, that guy sounds a lot like me, and maybe saying it slightly different. And, I tell you, with TrackMan and the stuff that we've talked about already, the mysteries of what makes the ball do what it does are evaporating. We're figuring out things pretty quickly, and it's a fun time to be a golf teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I'm enjoying it, and it's kind of fun.
Most of the students that I get who have issues, in particular with fading or slicing, because I'll get a fair amount of people in the shoulder seasons in March and April, and then in the early May, and then like now, probably October, November, early part of December, who are tourists,
Right,
and usually in the spring, and then we'll get people who come down here after New Year's that'll stay for the winter, the snowbirds, and then the summers
right,
is usually most of the local guys that I teach or girls that need a tune up, or they got a little crooked, or they got a Hilton Head Open, whatever the issue is. But what I'm getting at is most of the slicers who I have are coming out of off season a lot of times, and I basically related to them that you're not, your muscles just aren't. You might have flexibility because you're doing yoga, you're working out, or whatever you're doing, but you don't have golf flexibility. They don't have enough depth in their turn. They don't have hip turn. They don't have shoulder turn. They might be getting to 30 degrees, maybe 40 in the shoulder turn.
hmm
And then they, because of that club face, that lead arm hits that chest, and then it pronates, or and then it just
right.
opens up. So
It gets
the
kicked the wrong
overall,
way. Yeah,
yes, the overall cause and symptoms the same, but the open face for a lot of my students is not the result, or their slice is not it is the result of an open face, but it's not the cause. The
yeah,
open face is happening for other
yeah.
reasons.
You and I could have a real healthy debate discussion about that, and believe me, I've had them with other golf teachers. But so I see what you're saying. Um, there might be pivot issues or
Mm-hmm.
flexibility issues that are taking the toll on their face. But in the end, so really the downswing is a face opener. I mean, when you change directions and you
Yes.
put some speed into that handle to start speeding the handle up, the handle's going to get to 15, 18 miles an hour. It's starting from zero at the top. It's going to get to 15, 18, 20 miles an hour. And it's going a little bit away from your body. That's a face opener right there. And so, yeah, you've got all these things that are trying to open the face. The physics is trying to open the face. The force direction is trying to open the face. So that all that means is there's a little bit more work for you to have to do to close the face. And then that's where the debate between you and I would probably start. What are we going to do to close the face? And I tell you, I, you're going to have to convince me that all the answers aren't at the handle, no matter how flexible or inflexible a person is. There are definite backswings that maybe lead you to more open faces, but they're all, this is not a word, overcomable with how you twist on the grip. So you could have some really inflexible people with really bad pivots that you could still get the face closed by hook or by crook, and they can hit a draw. But again, I respect where you're coming from, because I've had that same discussion. Justin Bruton is a teacher in Miami. I think he's more in your camp,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to where I just think I just think we forget that haven't been close to the face, and we don't know how to close the face. And I think it's, at the top of the swing when the club is cocked, the flexion extension of the lead hand opens and closes the face quite a
Right.
bit.
Yeah.
When the club is uncocking, it's the pronation supination of the lead arm that opens and closes the face. So at different times in the downswing, different anatomical moves are controlling the majority of the face angle, and that's where I go first, for lack of a better way of describing it, to fix slicers and hookers. I go to where the hands are on the handle and describe that to them. But from the TPI world, from the body world, and a guy that has a really pretty deep knowledge of the golf swing. His name is on the tip of my tongue. He is Mike Adams, and this guy, what was
Terry
his name?
Rolls.
Not Terry Rolls.
E.A.
I know
Tischler.
E.A. Tischler.
Yes.
E.A. Tischler and I had a big back and forth about a year ago, and and I got this from Manzella. I'm not gonna. I'll give credit where credit is due. And you may have read this post that I wrote at some point in time. You give 100, you give 100 umbrellas to 100 12-year-old kids that have never played golf before. You put up a video of Tiger Woods making a 5-iron swing. You show them a swing face on. You show them one swing down the line, and then you hand 100 umbrellas out to 100 kids that play basketball and football, but that have never played golf. Umbrellas don't have a face. You're not hitting a ball, and you video all 100 of those kids. And if you find me one that comes over the top 10 degrees, I'll give you whatever you want. Whatever you want, I'll do for you, because there's nobody that has a propensity to swing a stick 10 degrees left of a target that you might give a kid that's never played golf before, because of a body issue. I think it's a learned behavior, because the face is open. They hit a shot, the ball goes to the right or tops over to the right. They're like, I don't want the ball to go to the right. My next swing, I'll get my right shoulder a little higher, and I'll get my path a little bit lefter, and the ball might go straight.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, they have a 10-degree left path, and the ball is slicing out there if they make contact. So no, I don't believe anybody has propensity to swing left because of their birth. They weren't born to swing left, just like they weren't born to swing right. I think they'd all be within a couple of degrees of zero, all 100 of them, if they were coordinated somehow. Now, if whatever reason, they're just not real coordinated, you might find a guy that swings 20 left. You might find a guy that swings 20 right. But I think it's a learned behavior, these big paths that are off to the left or off to the right, by poor club face control understanding. And so that's where I am. And I think you might be on the other end of that, possibly.
No,
And
I wouldn't be on the other.
would love.
It's just what I'm seeing is like the people will hit it straight, but if they, and you can see that their body movement, and when they do hit it straight, everything is back in sync. But then they complain to me. Well, the two complaints that they come to me in the off season or coming out of the off season are, one, they lost distance and they can't get it back, and or two, if they their directional control's off. So it's a double whammy. So
Sure.
And when they do hit it straight, I'm like, okay, everything's synced, but you've lost a distance. It's like we gotta get a bigger coil on you, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't think I'd be against what you're saying. Because I can see both things, and I know from the years I spent in the club fitting that there is a reactionary impulse to what the club is doing, right?
Oh,
right.
So
You're talking about the face, and when I was doing it, it was the shaft. Like
my thought would be that everybody who has these quote unquote poor unorthodox golf swings, they learn it through past ball flights, and that's these people that are coming to you, in and out of season, they've hit a bunch of golf balls.
Mm-hmm.
They've looked up and they've seen golf balls fly, and their brain reacts to every one of those flights. And I think it's just a learned behavior. I think it's less of a predisposition of the body to do that. It's more of a learned behavior by watching ball flight. And they see the ball curve right, they swing further left. They see the ball curve left, they swing further right. All of a sudden, they show up on your lesson tee hey, I'm not hitting it straight, or I'm not hitting it far, or whatever the case may be.
Hey, I'm with you because when I was young and just moved down here at 19, I used to watch Rick Barry would do. He did a happy hour clinic where he teamed up with a local realtor and Hutch Hutchinson, God rest his soul. Everyone on this island loved that guy. He would buy everybody there a free drink. They'd have the cart girl there set up. Hutch would buy a drink. He'd give his 5 to 10 minute real estate spiel, and then Rick would do the clinic. And everyone he did, he said, look, most people here hit a slice. And what's your go-to? Well, I'll just aim further left. And then he'd hit it, and he goes, what do? You hit a bigger slice. Right? So he said, that's not the fix. So yeah, right. I'm with you that it is a reactionary, whether it's kickback reaction or what have you, to what they're seeing. And it's like, okay, if it's going this way, I need to go more this way.
Right. And, I think Brian Manzella said that the only person that came over the top of it with a closed face consistently was Rick Pitino. He gave him golf lessons at some time. He said he came over the top of it, and the club face was always closed. So he's hitting this pull hook around the golf course. And I'm sure there's others, but he was a big guy that kind of opened my. Brian was a big person that opened my eyes to this, and I think he's right. I mean, I think we just learn, and think back to hack motion. All those little subtle little changes, and the readout is going crazy. And think about your TrackMan numbers, and you're 4 degrees off, you're missing a green, and think about how small 4 degrees is, and it's like wow, it's like. Small little changes that you can impart at the wrist and at the forearm, swiveling on the late downswing, how much that controls. And think about the guy that flips it. I mean, that club face is going crazy, open to close, down with the ball, and so even more of a haphazard face. And gosh, they're really lost because sometimes they flip it and hit it left, and then sometimes they don't flip it enough and they hit it right. They don't know which way to swing. They don't. Should I swing left or should I swing right?
Well, I think that might be one reason why hack motion, in the short amount of time they've been around, have made huge gains in movements in the coaching world. Because what they're doing, it's measuring something that was not measured before.
No doubt. Again, I don't own one, and it's something that I probably should and could look into, because I like I said, I'm moving my way up. I'm club on ball, TrackMan, hands on handle, Sasha McKenzie. Study what he comes up with, hands on the handle, and then I really haven't paid too much attention to the feet to the ground, other than everybody does it differently. People jump in the air, hit it 350. People have flat feet, hit it 350.
Right.
People that go side to side hit it 350, and people that just rotate hit it 350. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. So.
Yeah, Doc Scott Lynn was on the show. We had a great discussion about that.
Awesome.
That was pretty cool.
All this, it's great. I need to learn more about it, because I have a surface knowledge of all that stuff. The lateral and the horizontal and vertical forces into the ground. But I did a TrackMan event the other day. It's where you stand on the tee and video from 2 angles, and they get an email and they get their swing with some data. So I saw 112. I'll be kind. Hackers play hit off the first tee on the par 5, and the ground. I didn't move the station the whole day, which I should have, but I didn't. And the feet create this, these big old divots in the ground, and everybody works on the ground. Everybody does. Some are more efficient than others, but that's a big part of where we can generate the power. The friction that we put into the ground with our body weight and with our added weight, during parts of our swing, it gives us moment arms to torque on the ground and turn our body faster. The body turning faster turns our hands faster. The hands turning faster turn the club head faster. So it's all part of it.
Let me ask you this question, because I sit here and I watch a lot of the social media posts and guys post their theories and let's swing like this. And Hogan is always the go-to, right? It's like Hogan did this, and you could be more like Hogan. Why is it you think that nobody tries to emulate Nicklaus's swing more often?
Yeah. I've seen that question asked before, and that's a great question. I mean, geez, great ball striker. Um, I, I'm not, and I don't know the answer. However, I'm not a big emulating anybody's swing, to be honest. Let's make your swing better. Um, uh, but you can get great things from Jack Nicklaus's swing. You can get
Mm-hmm.
great things from Ben Hogan's swing. But why people don't try to, or teachers don't teach more of a, but then you'd say, well, what era are we talking about? In the 60s, it was definitely a little bit different than what he was in the early 80s. But you could say the same thing about Hogan. Jeff Martin have a few words about that. His that Hogan's different swings, but I don't know. Jack Nicklaus could hit a golf ball, straight up in the air with a 1 iron and make it look pretty easy. So why people wouldn't try to copy that a little bit more, I have no idea, because it was a great way to swing a golf club.
Mm-hmm.
And
But it might just be the technology. I had a back and forth. It wasn't even a debate. It was just discussion on Facebook with a buddy of mine. Travis Nance teaches just north of Atlanta.
sure.
And his theory was that the equipment helps you get the ball up in the air so much easier now that the swing
Hmm.
dynamics have changed, that it's almost you want to bring the ball down some, because equipment and the ball, everything's made to launch the ball so high to begin with. And
Right,
if you're swinging like Nicholas, well, why do you need to hit the ball even higher? I
right.
said, well,
That's
that's a
true.
pretty good theory on that one.
And one guy I haven't mentioned, and I've learned a ton from, and you've probably learned from him, is Dave Tuttleman. Do you know who Dave Tuttleman is?
Yeah, I know who he is. I haven't read it and followed him as much as I probably should, but
You
yeah.
really should. I mean, he's been more on the club end of things over the years, and I've kind of dragged him into some of the golf swing discussions over the last few years, and he's been on a few of the Zoom things that I've put together, and but he documents everything really well on his website. So if you Google Dave Tuttleman, there's articles that are really really detailed, that might be right up your alley, because he's big into shaft bending modes and
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that, and Dave is a great resource, and he loves golf, and he loves talking golf, and he would be somebody, if somebody's listening to this podcast that wanted to learn more about the physics of the golf swing and the club's interaction with the golfer and vice versa. Dave Tuttleman would be one of the first guys that I would look at, along with TrackMan's website and Frederick Tuxon and the stuff that he's put out over the years, his newsletters, and obviously great stuff there
Yeah,
too. So
people can learn. Young coaches, any of them out there that are listening, the TrackMan site and the Tuttlemans and a lot of these companies are putting videos or webinars or whatever
yeah,
educational tools that they have. They'll put a fair amount of it online for free on their
no,
websites, and I
no,
highly
no doubt.
recommend a lot of these young coaches go to these sites to learn these things.
I put together three different, two or three different Zoom calls over the past year and a half with um 6 to 10 or 12 of the guys that I respect, their information. A lot of Paul Wood, the head engineer at Ping,
Yeah, Paul Doc,
his partner
he's been
Eric.
on too.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of
Eric.
good guests on here.
Yeah, and so I've got the first one I did was more of a roundtable with multiple topics, and then the last couple I did were more specific to a certain thing. Definitely not a how to give a slicer lesson.
No.
This is much deeper, and these guys talking back and forth to each other. I want to get those guys in the same room, and Zoom made it easy to do it. And what we did was, Paul Wood is the director of, gosh, I'm gonna get this wrong.
Engineering, I think it
Yeah, the sports engineering
for
conference
Ping.
that's going to be in South Dakota next year. It's the international, man, I should know this. I'm sorry that I don't, because I'm going to go to it. But it's where people bring their papers and they present them. They have 15 minutes to present their findings, and it's all golf specific. And anyway, we made people donate a minimum of $25 to Golf Science at the Golf Science website that he monitors and runs. And I would send them the links to these Zoom videos, with passwords that they can watch. I think it's shoot 3, 6, it might be 8 hours of discussions about different topics, and you need to be pretty into it to enjoy it. But for people that are kind of inclined to look at these things, the Zoom calls that I put together over the last year and a half have been great. So that's something that maybe I can send you the link to that, and maybe some people can go there and donate. It goes to the Golf Science. They're going to give money to up and coming researchers to attend the get together in South
Yeah, if
Dakota.
you
I
want
think
to send
where
it
it's
to
going
me
to go
after
to. So.
when we're done, I'll be sure to put that in the summary and have the link to it with
Yeah.
all your other info and everything. Yeah, not a
Yes,
problem at
sir.
all.
Awesome.
Let me ask you this: if the X's and O's of the golf swing, meaning the club to path and the wrist angles and everything are what they are. It's like it's to a point now. It's really not debatable, right? If you have a cut
Right.
wrist, it's going to be very hard to hit a draw, and if you
Right.
flex it and so on. What is it that makes one teacher able to get their students to play better than say another teacher?
Yeah. No,
In your opinion, I mean, I've got mine.
yeah.
I'll be happy to share that with everybody. But you're the guest. I'd like to hear yours
No.
first.
Yeah. I think, all the things that I go when I go to these big seminars or big get-togethers. Like I'm hoping the top 100 things coming up at Pinehurst in November. I'm hoping to attend that again,
Mm-hmm.
and you just hear, boy, you hear at the PGA teaching summits in the past. I was always clamoring for more mechanics, and they were always wanting to talk about learning styles, and so all of these things that I would roll my eyes at. I think people better teachers than me probably dabbled in other areas where they made themselves they realized maybe the student in front of them was a visual learner versus a audible learner or whatever, listening to words or listening to pictures or whatever. And so there's probably a bunch of things that I'm not real good at that other teachers are good at, and they can get people to make the changes. And I'm just saying, come on, you can't make this change. It's like, and I'll hit it off with certain people, and I won't hit it off with some. And people will say, well, Mike, you just don't understand, the learning styles, and you need to do better than this. You need to be able to external cues, internal cues, and yeah, I'll freely admit that I'm not the best teacher in the country. Um, I feel like I'm one of the more knowledgeable instructors when it comes to golf mechanics, but that doesn't get you anything. That doesn't make a person better because I'm more knowledgeable. I've got to put it into that person and have them be able to do it. So what makes somebody better? I think they may be a little bit more well-rounded, and understanding how people learn and understanding how much to give or how little to give at a certain time during the lesson to get them to do it. um, you know, maybe somebody's more encouraging to do the work after the fact to get them to play better golf.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's lots of reasons why people are successful, but I would say maybe the more well-rounded teachers that have good knowledge and good coaching skills. A teacher is a teacher, a coach is a coach, and those are two different things. Maybe during an hour lesson, you teach for 15 minutes and you coach for 45. Maybe a half-hour lesson you teach for 10 and you coach for 20. And the people that find that nice mix of teaching and coaching seem to be more successful than some other people. But I think you need the basic knowledge of the mechanics before. You can't just be a good coach without any technical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you don't have any idea on what makes the ball fly the way it flies, you're just throwing stuff against the wall and hoping it sticks. And so that's why I'm studying the teaching part a lot harder. And right or wrong, that's the road I've gone down. And I've been chastised for that a lot. And but I'd like to think I have some success. I mean, my son is a 2022 college golf recruit, and I've slowly put things in his swing over the years, and he's a really good golfer, and he's going to be even better. I would like to think Mike Thomas, Justin Thomas's dad, he should be the PGA Teacher of the Year every year since 8 years ago when Justin came on the scene to until he falls out of the top 50 in the world. He was his only teacher. He's become number one in the world for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, why wouldn't you give it to him? He's a PGA member. He didn't screw this kid up. And he actively teaches him to this day. And he's a great teacher. And, And then he has other students that they don't get any better. And then he has other students that go do great things. So nobody bats 1,000%, 100%, I should say. And but Mike Thomas, I think he should get the Teacher of the Year award every year. That's just my thought.
Well, I mean, I have a very, I guess it would be similar in different language. Is that if like a great chef. Well, first of all, some people are going to say they're the best they ever had, have ever eaten, and others will say I can't, I don't like the food, right? So
Right.
there's always that. You're never going to hit it everybody.
No.
But as I learned, because there's a fellow who moved here to this area, I want to say Philippe's been here 10 years at least, and I think he's a fifth generation master baker from France.
Okay.
And I went over there. I became friends with him because I had an office next to his bakery, which was total torture at 7:30 in the morning or 8 in the morning.
Sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
Oh, I bet I gained 30 pounds that summer. That's my vice, right? I'd be in there. Oh, let me get this. And I'd go eat it, and 15 minutes later, I said, I got to go back and try this other one. Let me get the. So we became pretty good friends. But he started telling me, because I would say, no one around here in the South can make pizza worth a damn, compared to New York or Chicago or Philly or Detroit, some of the northern cities. And I said, I was told it's the water. I was told it's this. He said, no, it's not. You got to factor in humidity. You got to factor in the temperature outside. And I mean, he basically broke it down in baking and cooking into a science. And I'm like, okay. And I'm relating it to golf. I said, well, yeah, I get it completely. So to your
Right.
point, I think you have to know those things, and then you have to know when to apply certain things, and then when to back off, when to push hard, when to not push so hard. Based off your student, and that only comes with, I think, experience.
I get upset when people just assume that I can't coach somebody. There's a lot of people that is not just me, some other people too. It's just they're like, oh well, yeah, he knows kind of what the forces and torques are on the handle of the club, but he probably can't coach. Well, shoot, that's what I do for a living. I think I'm a pretty good coach. And could I be better? Of course I could be better.
You always can.
Could I hit a better percentage of improvement on players? Of course I could. But I think I'm pretty good. And if you don't think you're any good, then try to get better. If you don't try to get better, then shame on you. But I think there's a lot of misunderstanding out there that if you're a technical, or you have a technical understanding of the swing, you're probably not a good coach. And I'd like to disagree with that. Although I don't spend my waking hours trying to do some of the other things that I was talking about, understand learning styles. I don't spend a lot of time doing that, but I think I'm just, as a human being, I can kind of read people and see when I need to push, see when somebody's capable of something, see when, hey, maybe we need to go to a 12-degree driver. This 8-degree driver is just not working out for you. It's like, hey, yeah. I mean, I think I like to think that I have enough savvy and knowledge to be able to do that when I need to. Although I'm not a great, I'm not a club builder, but hey, I have enough knowledge to where, hey, I can work around some problems that that some people might think that I couldn't work around because of just being around the game for as long as I've been.
And I think most coaches, if in today's world, have grasped the technological side, and it's. I hate branding when like students will try to brand it to, well, that guy's too technical or this guy's too.
Right.
Like, okay, that's just what they heard in that lesson. And when I hear that nowadays, I'm like, let me ask you a question. Is George Gankis technical or not?
Right.
Because
yeah.
I mean, with all the G's and the squeegees and the sandals and everything else, I'm like, okay, but he's talking internal, external, flexion, angular deviations and all this other stuff. So and they sit there and they don't have an answer.
He's another guy. He's another Como guy. And has his social media presence gone down a little bit over the last 2 years, or am I just imagining that? I used to see, I don't know. I used to see a lot more than have you noticed that?
I have, and I would probably attribute it to when he went to the subscription on his. And it's the curse of success. It's like how he's got to continue working with the people who are coming to him, and then how much time is there in a day?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Kind of like remember Sonartech had the dream thing happen when Todd Hamilton won the British
Yeah,
Open, and they were so inundated with orders they couldn't meet him, and then they ended up going out of business.
that's true. Sometimes when you're a one-man show, everybody wants you and only you. It's kind of like Como being on your podcast. He's only one person. He only has
Right.
so much time a day, and yeah, he's tough. He's tough to track
Well, that's
down
okay.
sometimes.
Just so he knows, if he listens to this one, I'm just going to keep bugging the shit out of him until he finally caves in and says, "Fine, I'll do your show.
I'll
Just leave
put
me
the good
alone."
word in for you. I'll put the good. He's a tough man to track down, so don't feel so bad. But I don't know. It's so much fun. What Michael Jacobs and Brian Manzella have done on the other side of that argument, all that has done, other than maybe annoy people, is I think it's opened up a debate about the science of the golf swing,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I'm a big part of stimulating a lot of those conversations. Whether you like my way of going about it or not, I think I've stimulated some of the. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I feel like I really push for it, and I think eventually it gets into the magazines, and eventually it gets on TV, and then eventually people said, "Yeah, I understood that 20 years ago," when they really didn't. But I don't care. It's like I just want good information getting out there, and whether Frank Nobilo or Brandel Chambly on TV is going to say, yeah, the force on the handle must have gone in that direction for that club to bank that way, and whatever the case may be. I'm a happy golf teacher dad to see these ideas get through from these peer-reviewed papers to a golf teacher on the lesson tee, from the lesson tee to a Brandel Chambly, and then Brandel Chambly out of his mouth on TV. I feel happy when good stuff gets out there,
Mm-hmm.
and the bad stuff goes away. The old common knowledge, commonly accepted thoughts just go away because they were bad ideas, bad principles. Now replace them with actual principles, and it's fun to see that stuff get exposed to everybody. So that's what
Speaking
I'm happy.
of some of the things that you've worked on, I listened to you. I don't know if it was a other podcast or a lecture, so to speak, or webinar that you did, but it was in regards to light versus heavy in the swing, and I thought it was pretty interesting. Can you speak
Like
to that just a little bit?
like you're talking like body weight, like the percentage of your body weight that you're putting into the ground at any certain point. Is that what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
if I remember right, it was that, and then how the club goes from light to heavy. If I remember, I think it was a kind of a combination of both. That I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. I
Club
haven't not.
like it. Yeah. So, well, two different things there. So, these force plates, the three-dimensional force plates that are out now. I mean, you can see the percentage of your body weight that you're pushing in. So you're just standing there and you're 180 pounds. You're
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is in newtons. Six, 800 newtons or something like that. Whatever newtons of force, you're just standing there. During the backswing, early, midway in the backswing, you are making yourself really heavy. And when you change directions and you start your arms down, you start to make yourself really light. And that percentage of body weight going up and then violently down is a way to pump energy into the system. And good players have figured out how to harness this vertical, lowering and raising and lowering of their center of mass to change their body weight into the ground, and they've figured out that's a better way to torque into the ground at certain times and create speed, angular rotational speed. So that's one thing, lightweight. Now, as far as the golf club is concerned, I don't know exactly what you're talking about. I do know that the club feels lighter when you cock your wrist in the backstroke, and the center of mass gets more in line with where your hands are, and gravity's pulling in a certain way, and the club can feel lighter. But maybe you're
I think it
talking
was
about the
more about
moment
the.
of inertia.
Yeah, it was that, but I think it was more about when you got into it. It was about making yourself light and then making yourself heavier, which is what you
Oh
just
yeah.
touched on.
No, yeah, I mean, that's how you jump. I mean, you when you go into the ground and you lower your center of mass, it's like your center of mass is going down an elevator. And when you're going down in an elevator, you feel light, right? Because the elevator's going down and you don't have as much pressure into the ground. So yeah, during the backswing, as you kind of wind up, you make yourself heavy for a second, and then as the center of mass, you're right below your belly button inside your body, or well, maybe just outside your body. When you lower the system center of mass, you're not pressing into the ground quite as much, and you make yourself lighter. And eventually, some people are pushing in the ground so hard after that center of mass lowers that you can lift your feet up off the ground. So yeah, I mean, it's it's light heavy, and you do that as a human being, just learning how to jump, and uh, to dunk a basketball, or try to dunk a basketball. And then the golf swing, part of that function is used to make the club go faster. One of the greatest things in golf is, or theories in golf, is keeping the club on plane. Even Bryson DeChambeau tried to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing. I mean, the head and the handle are working on wildly opposite planes of motion. And Dr. Kwan and Chris Como have a big paper on it. The motion planes of all the different body parts. The right shoulder and left shoulder work on different motion planes. The right elbow works on a different motion plane. The golf club as a whole is not working on a motion plane. The head gets going so fast, you can define a plane that it's moving on, but the handle and the head and a lot of golf swings are moving on different motion planes. And so human movement is you throwing yourself off balance, off plane. If you never threw yourself off balance or off plane, you can never move your body or the golf club. And so for the people that want to stay on plane, they would just be sitting there in their dress position, never moving. If they would never be able to hit the ball. It's kind of like, trusting that you can throw yourself off balance and you're going to catch yourself. That's the same thing with making yourself light, making yourself heavy during the swing. You've got to do it to create motion. And so the people that quote unquote want to keep the club on plane the entire way, that's fantasy. It doesn't happen. It's never happened in any swing. And I get a chuckle when I hear that stuff, because without off plane motion, we would never be able to move the golf club.
So for some of the people who might not, so center of mass, as you touched on a little bit, would be, let's say that the 3D center of your, close to your belly button, or your middle of your pelvis, to give somebody, not the middle of the pelvis, but to give somebody an idea, kind of like if you could take it in the behind your belly button, somewhere around your spine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know exactly where it is at address. It's outside your body, I think, because your arms are kind of out toward the ball. The club weighs something. So the whole golfer system, your center of mass, is pretty close to your belly button, but it's probably just outside in open air, outside your body.
Right.
Now, as you swing back, the center of mass doesn't move all that much, because everything kind of can't. Instantaneous center of mass is not moving a ton, but I could be wrong about this, but it never really deviates too far away. The overall system center of mass is never too far away from your belly button.
So explain how that goes for someone who doesn't see swings like we do all the time, and they're trying to they're driving, or they're sitting in their office and they should be working, but they're listening to us. Explain how that goes up and then comes down.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you squat down, and you make yourself from, well, I guess when a 6-foot person bends over and plays golf, he might be 5'7", and maybe he's 5'8" at the top of his backswing. Maybe if he raises up a little bit, and then if he has a tiger head dip from 8 years ago that Brandel was giving him a hard time about, makes himself into a 5'4" golfer. All that expanding and compressing, those small little inches of movement for the overall system would slightly move the center of mass of the whole system, of your whole body. And then your arm swinging to the right side of your body would send the center of mass, towards your right hip. And then your arm swinging forward, the center of mass would move slightly to your left hip. So it's always moving a little bit. But if you kept your center, so when you're working into the ground, the net, this could just get a little deep here.
This is going to blow a lot of minds are going to be blowing up here in a minute.
Yeah. Your individual feet are pushing into the ground. They have ground reaction force vectors that pop up out of the ground and either intersect or don't intersect with your overall center of mass. When they're intersecting with your center of mass, you're not moving. There's just no way to move. When you angle that net force, that ground reaction force vector combined, when you angle it away from your center of mass by moving, by pushing side to side, by rotating, then you create moment arms, and we're getting real deep here, and you can create movement. But it's all invisible. You can't see any of this stuff. You can see it in a Dr. Kwan or a Sasho animation
Mm-hmm.
on the ground, but yeah, it's the way we move. And I would encourage anybody to go to Dr. Kwan on the Golf Biomechanics Facebook page that Nick Turtok runs, and look up and type in Dr. Kwan ground reaction forces, and he has hundreds of animations in there, and you can see the ground reaction force vectors intersecting or not intersecting with your center of mass, and that creates movement of the body in all three planes. What are they? Frontal, horizontal.
Sagittal.
Whatever the three planes of motion
Yes.
are. So you can move. That's how you move, by having your ground reaction force vector not being intersected with the center of mass of your body, and then you can move your body in all those planes of motion. And that probably went over a lot of people's heads, but if you look at it, it's pretty neat to watch. Again, we're getting back to the feet into the ground, and everybody has a signature of their feet into the ground, and changing that signature is immensely tough. And do you get bang for your buck changing that signature of feet into the ground? Or is 102 miles an hour fast enough for you? Or do you want to try to get 104? Okay, maybe we push a little bit this way, push a little bit that way, and then 104. Okay, it was that hard to get? It was pretty easy. Okay, well, you want 106? Maybe we need to change a little bit more. But where let's fit your face and path hitting the golf ball. Maybe you get a little bit more bang for your buck. Now, if you're an aspiring player and you want to get to 115 or 120, then maybe you go a little bit deeper into how to use the ground. But for a 20 handicap coming in for a lesson to hit it straighter, ground reaction forces is probably not the first thing I was going to pop up on my radar.
Yeah, because wasn't it when the kinematic sequence stuff came out that the scientific world, because you have to blend when something comes out like that, you have to blend the scientific world and what physics is going to say, and then what the actual players are doing. Wasn't it that they found out that when they expected some of the best players in the world, the tour players, that it would all fall into the model, and then they found out, like, wow, some of these players are all over the map.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think I was sort of, maybe not on the front line of this discussion. I was pretty close to it, though, because Phil Cheatham, captured a lot of data in the 2000s and early 2010s. And it was funny because, everybody assumed that from the top of the swing down to impact, all the tour players would accelerate 1, 2, 3, 4. It would be hips, torso, arm, club. And he said 50% did 1, 2, 3, 4, speeding the club up. And I don't know the exact combinations, but sometimes the torso would speed up a little faster than the hips, or the arm would speed up a little faster than the torso, or it would go 1, 3, 2, 4, or whatever the case may be. But only 50% went 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are the best golfers in the world. And so if they're not all going 1, 2, 3, 4, hips, torso, arm, club, then maybe the kinematic sequence and having a perfect, sequence that TPI likes to tout, maybe that's not the most, maybe that's not a be all end all in being a good golfer. Maybe it's the most efficient, and they like to push. TPI likes to push, and it's the most efficient way. And I guess you could argue that it is, but not everybody does it. So,
well, that's the thing.
Does that make it the most efficient? I don't know. It's a good discussion to have.
That efficiency is the key term there, because it's like, and I think I had this discussion with Doc Scott Lynn. It might have been Paul Wood. That it's like, over the past decade, 10 to 15 years, the accumulation of data and the ability to record that is like second to none in history. And everybody was touting, you have to do these things, that being one of them. But now it's like they have all this, and now that they're all the research guys are sorting through this, and they're talking to guys like you and Scott Cowks and some really, really high level guys. It's like, how do we, I think the next level and what everyone's finding out is, okay, everyone obviously is different, and we've known that from day one. But how do we take all this data that we have and then apply what we think is needed per the individual?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of questions there. So maybe the answer is when Phil Cheatham says, well, 50% go 1, 2, 3, 4, and the other 50% don't. Maybe we need, as teachers, we need to maybe just not worry about it quite as much.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that I think that's a fundamental answer. And if every tour player or 99% went 1, 2, 3, 4, then maybe
Then it'd be
that's
different.
something that we need to start
Right.
pushing. But when only half do it, then it's like, well, maybe it's not as important as we think it is.
Yes,
So
it's either leave it or determine
right.
who's a 3-2-1-4, who's a 2-4-1-3. You know, you got to either determine what goes to the person, or let's maybe not weigh that one as much as we would wrist angle or face to path or impact.
But so now that we're talking about across the spectrum of golfers, or tour players at least, so 50%. But then your second question was, what do you do with one golfer? Mm-hmm. And okay, this guy is 1, 3, 2, 4, whatever. Do we need to change him? And that's the question that you and I face every day. Maybe not that specific question, but do we make this change? Are we going to get something out of it? Is this going to be in this person's long-term benefit? And that's the question that you and I have to deal with every day.
Yes.
And the more you study, I think you get better tools to analyze that question. And efficient, the word efficient and the word optimal have been thrown around by not only TPI, a lot of teaching factions over the years. And those two words are the two scariest words in my mind. Optimal. Who says what's optimal? You don't know what optimal is, and who says what's more efficient? And you can argue 1, 2, 3, 4 is more efficient, and I'll listen to that argument all day long. But when people just throw more efficient around, like, strengthen your grip and slow your rate of closure down, that's more efficient. Well, okay, prove it to me. Mm-hmm. Sasha McKenzie was on Scott Fawcett's podcast the other day, or Lou Stagner's podcast the other day. He totally blew that up the other day. Totally blew that up. The handicap on one axis, rate of closure on the other axis, it's a shotgun blast. So there is no low rate of closure that's going to make you a good player, or a high rate of closure that's going to make you a hacker. That just doesn't happen. I'm off on a tangent there, but optimal and efficiency have been overused and bastardized and used to harm mechanics principles a lot, in my estimation. And I say mechanical advantage. A lot of the golf machine guys used to talk about mechanical advantage. Oh, this is a mechanical advantage. And I used to say that word a lot around Sasha, and he'd say, stop using that. It's like that, that really doesn't apply here. Conservation of angular momentum. That Young-Hoo Kwan, his head would explode. That doesn't really apply to the golf swing. It's you're constantly inputting your own forces and torques from the ground at the handle into the system. So there's nothing conserved in the golf swing. It's all pumped into the golf swing. And that, I guess that would be another example of what's wrong with the golf machine. They talk about conserving angular momentum, and that just doesn't get conserved. So that brings us back around to about an hour ago. But
that is one thing. Let me ask you, because I wrestle with this. I don't wrestle with it, but if sometimes I'll have a student out there and they'll be hitting balls, and they'll look at me, and I maybe have a perplexed look on my face, and they're like, "Well, do you know what's wrong, or don't you?" And I'm like, "That's not the problem. I know what's wrong." But or at least I think I know what's wrong. But the thing that's going through my head is, how do I take them where I want to, given all the things I see going on in their swing? I know where we need to go, but what do I start to tweak and modify based off what else I'm seeing so that it doesn't go completely haywire? And so how do I get them to where I need to get them without making another problem?
You're thinking about the roadmap to where this guy wants to go.
Yes.
And that's a huge part of that. And I asked, they used to spend an hour presentation. Every teaching summit would be, hey, you got to do the golfer interview before the lesson starts. Who doesn't know how to interview somebody?
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on. Like, what are your goals? What do you shoot? 90? Is your goal to shoot
Yeah,
75?
where do
Is
you
your
want to
goal to
get
shoot
to?
60? Yeah, like, where do you want to go? It's like, you got to be an idiot not to ask that question. And if you're a teacher out there and you're not asking questions about what the guy's goals are before you start watching them hit balls, then you're doing that student a disservice. Because I mean, yeah, so that's what you're doing. You're being quiet. You're watching this guy hit, little snap hooks or whatever, and you're trying to say, okay, where do I start? Do I start at the handle? Do I start at the ground? Do I start with his alignment? Do I start with the right shoulder on the downswing? Do I start with his grip? And all you're trying to do is figure that out in your head, and then you need to know something about the golfer in front of you to see what he can handle or what he can't handle, to kind of factor into where you're going to go. And I do the same thing. I might be a little bit less quiet than you. I tend to jump in, but after about 5 balls, I get a pretty good idea of where I want to go. And the more experience you get, yeah, the easier it is, for me at least. And again, I don't bat 100%, but I'm trying every day.
Yeah, you
Trying
you
to.
said you hit the nail on the head. The more experience you have, the more you understand where, like, okay, 5 years ago, I might have went a different direction
Right,
with somebody and then knew that I would have to cure something else later on, where now it's like, okay, if I go
right.
this direction, then these two things, the chance of them falling to the wayside are very great.
If I
Um,
if I buy if I buy a $25,000 force plate, and I put it into an indoor to outdoor hitting bay, and I have a 20 handicapper come in and they're hitting push slices, and I start talking about how he's pushing into the ground for the whole lesson, I haven't done that guy
mm-mm.
a service. It's like I started. Okay, it's like, all right, he's not pushing into the ground all that great, but boy, there's a bigger fish to fry here. And just because you buy a piece of technology doesn't mean you need to use it. And I have TrackMan rolling with every student, and there are a lot of times where I have it rolling where I don't look at the numbers until later on, because I know that's we don't have to worry about these numbers until we fix some major things going on in this guy's golf swing, and then we can. Hey, I tell people all the time, it's like, hey, once I get you hitting it somewhere in the face, I can start giving you a real golf lesson. It's like what I call a real golf lesson, a face pass attack golf lesson. And hey, but if the person's topping the ball or whiffing the ball, it's hard to give that person a face pass attack lesson. So anyway, I don't know. It's great.
That's funny how you say that you have it for the whole lesson, but you're not
Yeah.
sitting there
No.
watching it every swing, because I
Oh,
think the perception with some of the public is, well, these coaches, they have the technology and they sit there and that's all they do is teach. And I remember, I don't know how, this might have been 7 years ago or so, that there was a column about, and they were referring to old school versus new school. And
right.
and they used Butch as an example, and they said, he was walking past one of the modern teachers who had their gadgets out there, and the player hit the ball, and the coach was looking down at the screen and said, "Oh, that was a great shot." And Butch said, "Well, the thing went 30 yards off the end of the range, to the side." I think the author was trying to make a point.
Right.
But as I've talked to a number of coaches, I've had a number of top 100 coaches on, you included, and even being in the industry, I was surprised at how many don't use it repetitively and throughout the lesson. They maybe get a baseline in the beginning, and then see where they need to go, and then they'll do the instruction in the lesson, and then closer to the end, they'll start saying, "Okay, let's see where we are now," and they'll use it as a
Exactly.
guide. They don't use it exclusively. And I was
Exactly.
guilty of thinking that too many coaches of the new era, so to speak, were utilizing it all the time. And I raised my hand. I was guilty of that. And now that I've talked to enough and seen enough guys teach, it's like, no, you don't. And it's
No.
not killing
I mean,
swings. It's helping.
my lessons that I give repetitively, to people that like to come back, whatever, every couple weeks or whatever. I don't have a ton of people that come every week. I don't encourage them to. I encourage them to play and practice a lot between lessons. I don't want them to use me as a crutch. But a good player, whether he's a junior golfer or an adult golfer, that's pretty good. I'll have TrackMan on in the beginning of the lesson, and make sure they haven't fallen off the wagon. A guy's kind of a hooker, and he comes back out after about 3 weeks, he's gone and he's swinging the 7-iron 6 degrees to the right. Hey, maybe we need to cut that in half. And here's a feel to help you cut it in half. And oh, you're at the 3. And then I'm not looking at TrackMan anymore because he's putting up 2s and 3s and he's hitting a little draw instead of a big draw. And and that's kind of how I use TrackMan. And obviously, it has a lot of other tools. It has the video that you can do, and you can record a screencast at the end of a lesson and kind of remind people of what you worked on, and they have a 2-minute video with a recap. I mean, there's so many good uses of TrackMan. It's not even funny, and I'm so blessed to be able to have one, and it's a company that's always trying to get better, and they don't mind making upgrades, and because they're not scared of saying, "Oh, well, you had it wrong before." Nah, we're just getting better, and it just gives you good feedback. And I use it all the time. It's great, and I recommend anybody that can afford it to go out and get one as a teacher for sure.
What was the biggest improvement you had with a student?
Oh gosh, I mean, like short term or long term. I mean, I've got a lot of long term golfers that I took from beginners to basically scratch. Probably most of those guys were junior golfers, but the guys that would shoot 100, now they're shooting 65 when they play well. I've had a bunch of those kids, but those, you can attribute that to junior golf and getting better. Adults, shoot, I don't know. I'm not a real good documenter of all of this, but I've taken a lot of teen handicaps down to 3s and 4s, and overnight, it doesn't really happen that way a lot. I've kept people from quitting the golf club a lot by hitting their driver 190 yards and then getting in a decent grip, turning the ball over, hitting it 250. They kept being a member of the club and kept paying their dues because they can enjoy the game more.
That's probably one of the most important.
Those would
keep your job.
Those would be huge successes. Exactly. And I think hopefully the country clubs where I've worked have appreciated that. But no, my son's, he started playing when he's about 4 or 5, and he's about to sign a Division I college scholarship here pretty soon in the next couple months. And I'd like to think he's probably my best student. As far as cradle to the grave type of thing. And I've got a kid that signed with Oklahoma the other day, another kid who's in my son's class. He's going to Oklahoma, one of the top programs in the country. And so I like to keep people from falling way off a cliff, and I use TrackMan. The guys want to draw it, let's get +1 or +2 with a 0 face, +1 face. You want to cut it, let's go -1, -2. Let's be able to do it on the side hill lie. Let's be able to do it out of the rough. Let's be able to do it with the driver. Let's be able to do it with the pitching wedge and everything in between. And then turn on a TrackMan combine and be able to get 80 or above on that and be able to control your distances and be able to putt a little bit and then go beat somebody. So, I'm blessed. I'm about 1% of these kids' success. They're 99% of it. But I like to think my 1% is an informed, good, fundamentally sound 1%. And then my son takes that 1% and he works at it. And now he's going to go to college and play golf, and he has aspirations of playing beyond college too. And I'd like to think that my study has given him a good grip, a good way to step into it, a good way to clear his mind before he takes the club back, and a second, 1.25 seconds of action, and send the ball on its way. And if it goes into the hazard, go up, take your drop, knock it on the green, 2-putt for your bogey, and you go play, then go birdie the next hole. And that's how I teach not just my son. I teach all these kids the same way, and my adults. That's my goal with them. Some do more work than others, and they make you look good. It's not just the instruction; it's the student that makes you look good. And I guess they can make you look bad too if they don't work bad. And I'm still shooting 100. You didn't help me at all. It happens.
Is there any lesson that sticks out over your career that you would say that was the best lesson I ever gave?
Well, I think, maybe it would go back to what I was joking about a second ago about keeping a member of the club, a person who was hopelessly, hitting their 8-iron 100 yards, because the club is wide open and there's 20 degrees left path, and throwing the club to try to throw it closed and the ball's going straight up in the air, like a lob wedge, and being able to teach that person. I don't specifically have a name to give you, but I've done that probably. I'd like to say I've done that 50 to 100 times in my life, where I'd said I got them to hit an 8-iron 150 yards when they were hitting it 100, just obviously, and doing it quickly. There's some people that can get it quickly, and those are the lessons that maybe stand out to me, where it's like I completely changed this person's golf life in a very short time. One lesson, two lessons, 15 minutes sometimes, and those are the lessons that really make you happy to be a teacher, because hey, I think I've just hooked this guy for a long time, and so those lessons go well. I'm frightened to be a tour teacher. David Toms won 13 times on tour. He never took a golf lesson from me, but I have a lot of friends that teach tour players. I'm frightened to get up there and watch a guy hit a 5-iron 210 in the air with a 1-yard fade, and then him turn around and go, so what can I do better there? I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like, what? It's like that teaching gets into putting your arm around a guy or a girl and saying, you're the best, go out and beat everybody's butt, and being more of a Butch Harmon coach, and because a lot of these kids can do it. They can hit the ball, they can putt the ball, they can chip the ball, and being a tour teacher, I would imagine, is just keeping somebody from from just not believing in themselves, really encouraging them and saying that you can play, like being a caddy. You're out there with them, and you can do this. You can hit this shot. Look at that tree in the distance. Hit it at that tree. Hit it there. Scott Fawcett. Send it. There's a par 5. The percentages are in your favor. Hit the 3-wood up by the green, and that's tour teaching. The tour teachers aren't teaching somebody to get the right shoulder lower so they can have their path further right so they can hit a draw. Those guys aren't doing that.
No,
they're something different.
It's managing. Coach Tom Moore, who was Peyton's offensive coordinator for years, and I think he's down in Tampa now. The guy, he just doesn't stop working. I don't know how old Coach Tom is, but he and my brother got to be good friends. My brother worked at the club that he lived at, and he had us come down to a Monday night game when Indianapolis played down there years ago, and we were talking to him, and it's like, because I think he coached college at Louisville decades ago. This like in the 70s, late 70s, maybe, before he went back to the NFL. And we said, well, what was the difference? And he said, I just wasn't into going to dorms and getting kids out of bed. I wasn't into playing their mother. I was there to coach football. He said, in the NFL, if these guys don't get up and show up, they're gone. Right. And
right.
There's a different mentality. And I think someone asked Phil Jackson why he didn't coach college, why he stayed in the pros. And it was something to a similar effect. But he alluded to it. It's managing the mental side once you get to the pro level. And it's not,
right.
Here's how you swing.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, they're there for a reason. Those tour players, they have a tour card for a reason. They've already gone down a lot of roads and figured out how to get the ball from A to B. And it's an art. I don't know if I could do it. I haven't really had a chance. I've worked with some pretty good mini tour players, and but boy, like I described a second ago, I mean, I guess if somebody was really going off the edge and he's a tour player and he just has no clue, I think I could probably be a pretty functional teacher doing that. But the nuances of the 2-yard cut versus the 4-yard cut, and what to do, and how to get the guy to do it over and over again. All I'm going to do is go to when I got a player hitting it great in front of me, whether he's 15 or 55, but they play high level golf. I just tell them it's time to ring the bell. And
just go play.
Ringing the bell is bringing the club face that you need for this shot at hand. It's not the path. They've got the path. It's not the speed. They've got the speed. It's not the focus. They've got the focus. They need to control the club face. And I tell them, hey, it's ringing the bell. It's time to ring the bell. Don't think about impact. Think about where you're going to be at the finish. But down by impact, you better ring the bell. And that's what I say. And I think if I was a tour player, instructor, I'd be saying ring the bell quite a bit out on the range because I don't know how much more I'd have for him. Like, oh, well, you need to do this and with your left wrist. And that's like, you're not doing that. If you do it, you're probably coaching right off the tour. So,
yeah, it's and every week, you can't be thinking of your swing week to week. It just fry your brain at that level. It's
right.
like
And
course preparation and how you're going to play.
but the thing that goes against that is you do hear these guys that are thinking about their swing week to week, whether it's a Jordan Spieth or whether it's somebody else, and and those guys, it's scary because you could go south really really quick. I respect the heck out of guys like Jordan Spieth that have really valleyed and then come back up to some peaks, and to be able to have the fortitude to fight through slumps, and that is amazing. And Cameron McCormick is a great coach, and I respect the heck out of guys that they can get people out of deep dark places and be able to have some success. But the guys that have access to 100 mini tour players, the 90 guys that you never hear of, they never really get beat up for that because you never heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
But they get a lot of accolades for the 10 guys that they help. So if you have 100 mini tour players coming at you each year, and you're in Las Vegas or Palm Springs or Tampa or Orlando, and you're a tour teacher, or Dallas, should you get dinged up for the 90 guys you didn't get to the tour? I would disagree with that too. And it's a numbers game. And are the top 100 teachers, are the top 100 teachers filled with guys that teach tour pros? Yeah. I mean, more than half the list probably work with a handful of tour pros. But there probably are other better teachers that are just at the country club level working day in and day out that might be better teachers. They just don't hear about them because they're not winning tour events.
Right.
So,
and if you, when Butch, before he kind of went and did, retired, and now he's enjoying life, and he should on a more regular basis. But before he did that, when he would come on TV or the Golf Channel, or I think he was doing BBC, and they would say, when he was working with Ricky, how's Ricky hitting it? Oh, he's never hit it better. He's going to play great this week. Or how's Phil hitting it? Phil's hitting it great. I haven't seen Phil hit it better in 3 years I've been with. Right? And he was more coach than he was instructor.
Oh, 100%.
And he knew probably how to do that better than anybody.
Yeah, Pete Cowan. Pete's a really good functional swing teacher. But he's also I don't know him at all personally. Sasho knows him a little bit. I'm sure Chris Como knows him, but nothing but positive things to say about guys that can teach at the highest level. They might not necessarily have the highest mechanical knowledge of the golf swing, but that doesn't matter. They don't need it because they're teaching guys that already have it. And you got to be you have to be nuanced enough to be able to push the right buttons with these guys. And boy, more often than not, it seems like they do it.
It's keeping them from drifting or letting that 1 ounce of doubt creep in.
Yep.
Who did I have on that we talked about Jordan, and it was like 1 ounce of doubt got to 2 ounces of doubt, and then that just it snowballed. By the time they caught it, it just snowballed. It's like, okay, now we're in crisis management.
I know Cameron McCormick a little bit, and it was toward the end of everybody talking about Jordan Spieth's driving issues, and I don't watch Golf Channel nonstop, and I'm not talking to guys about swings nonstop at the tour level. I mean, I look at this stuff pretty closely, but I wasn't following Jordan's driving troubles as closely as a lot of other people were.
Mm-hmm.
So I just private message Cameron. I think we all we do is we talk through Twitter, direct message or whatever. And I sent him a note. I said, is Jordan hitting the driver bad because of bad face path, or is he hitting it bad because of bad contact location? Is he towing it and hitting hooks? Is he heeling it and hitting cuts, high, low, whatever on the face, or is it face path? And he says, and he texts me back or whatever, face path. And then an hour later, he sends me another text and he goes, Actually, both. And I was like, so I mean, so Jordan Spieth is the same as my student that I had earlier today. I mean, so he puts up 0-0. My student puts up 0-0 with the driver, hits it in the heel a little bit, and cuts it off the earth. And they're like, I just made a bad swing. Well, no, you made a really good face path swing, but you hit it in the heel, and the ball cut off because of gear effect. And so, you got these curved driver heads and curved fairway wood heads and curved or faces, I should say, hybrid faces. And as a club builder, I mean, the gear effect is huge, and so you can talk yourself into, man, I'm swinging bad. I'm like, no, you're actually swinging pretty good. You're just not hitting in the middle of the face. And then that person might say, oh, well, you're swinging bad, and the result is you're not hitting it in the middle of the face. And that's a fair argument, and that might just be another set of knobs you need to turn to get the person to hit it in the middle of the face. But it sure doesn't look like face path, because you're bringing in 0-0 or 0-2 slightly off the heel, and the ball's cutting off the right side of the fairway. So, I just thought it was interesting that Jordan Spieth was struggling with both, and that makes sense that he was struggling with both. He wasn't real consistent with either. But you gotta understand ball flight and the interaction of the ball and the club, which that kind of gets my gears going. And to be able to say, hey, Jordan, let's attack both of these things, because both of these things are making your ball fly crooked. And anyway.
Does it irritate you when you see announcers or somebody say that so and so is just a great talent? That's why they're so good.
Oh yeah. I mean, that the people that are pushing the rate of closure, the low rate of closure is better, and you'll be a better ball striker, less dispersion. And then they see a guy that is a little flippy, a little loose through impact, but he's won 10 times on tour, and they're like, oh, he just has great hands. And it's like, oh, come on, there's got to be more to it than that. And you're not saving anything. The only shot you can save is the next shot that you're about to hit. There's no shot you can save on the downswing. Everything is happening way too fast. Obviously, there's nothing you can save once the ball makes contact with the club, because impact is too fleeting. You might be able to save something early in the downswing and say, oh God, going left, and roll the face over to make it go straight or left. But
well, yeah, I've always said that the human body cannot send compute something's off, send a new message, and implement that message muscularly from the time
the shot that you're hitting.
Right, not once you change the direction, it's over.
0.00045 seconds, also known as 450 microseconds, the club is up against the ball. It's already done. You're done. The ball is 50 yards down line when you feel the vibrations up in your hands. And maybe not that far.
Well, that's like when someone
says, pretty far down there once you feel the vibrations up in your hands.
Right.
And then by the time the vibrations get to your brain,
even when players say, well, that camera got me in my downswing, I call bullshit on that one, because you're not changing the message that's already been sent by the time transition happens to impact.
Right.
It's not humanly possible.
You see Tiger and the cut out of the fairway bunker. I think that wasn't it at your course, Harbortown? It might have been at Harbortown. He hit that big cut out of a fairway bunker, and he did all the craziness after the fact.
Oh, that was in Mexico, I think, at the
was it
WGC,
in Mexico? Oh, yeah,
yes,
somewhere. And he hit a great shot, and everybody and you look at his downswing, impact, and just post impact. It looks like every other swing that he's ever made. Now, for sure, he definitely had a more open face to path, and the ball cut because of that. But that was predetermined by his grip, by his intent on the initial part of his downswing. But all the histrionics, when the ball's gone, it's programmed, and all that stuff after the fact that's not changing anything other than people thinking that he has great hands. But back to your question. There's got to be something more to it. Phil Mickelson's a pretty stinking good ball striker. When he won that British Open a few years ago, did he win a British Open? Yeah, he won a British Open.
Yeah, and then he won one, and then almost caught Henrik.
Flushing the ball. It was coming out of the middle of the face. You could just hear it on TV. He was just flushing it, and his hands were doing the exact same thing they've been doing his whole life. And he's just a good ball striker.
Mm-hmm.
And he's top 1% of all time. And some people might say if you take that 1%, is he loosey goosey in that 1% spectrum? Yeah, maybe so. But pretty good success on that spectrum.
Well, I don't know. I'm not privy to the rate of closure numbers on Colin Montgomery, but I would say he had a pretty big,
Yeah.
the toe up and the old school toe up in the backswing, toe up in the follow through. So what's the rate of closure on his? And he's one of the best ball strikers in the modern era.
Right.
So
and then you see that video. You saw the video of the of the kid from Oklahoma State. What's his name? From Norway, Victor Hovland.
Victor
you saw
Hovland.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that picture of the club with like a 7-iron or 6-iron going through the ball, and it looks like it's really quiet. He's obviously a great ball striker. So the low rate of closure guys will latch on to that and say, "Wow, you got to teach people to be Victor Hovland through the ball." I mean, you teach Phil Mickelson to Victor Hovland through the ball. You
don't hear from him again.
His wrist is going to be broken within 5 days, and he'll never play golf again. So you got to watch it. And like Sasho said in that podcast with Lou Stagner, Scott Fawcett, Mark Crossfield, I think Mark does the podcast. Like he said, there's more to study. There's more to study about rate of closure, but right now it's inconclusive. There's no preference to low or high. There's successful golfers on the high end and low end of the spectrum and everywhere in between. And so, but he's going to keep looking because he thinks it's worth to keep looking. And that's the kind of scientist you want to follow, a guy that's willing to say there might be something there. I'm going to keep studying it. And not just to close the book on it and say low rate of closure is the way to go, or not, it doesn't matter at all. You want somebody where Sasha is, where he's going to look into it and he has the ability to actually study it, as opposed to a Brian Manzella and a Mike Finney, who we have an opportunity to guess about it. Oh, that looks like it is doing what it's doing, and but we're just observing. Sasha's measuring and testing and then putting it on paper, and we can read it and learn from it. So
yeah, it's a difference between, like, a friend of mine always says, he's world class at what he does. He always says, "Hey, stay in your lane."
Yeah, exactly.
He goes, you know a lot about this field and probably more than some people in the field, but just stay in your lane. Let me handle 100%. That side of the stuff.
And that's my problem that I've had with Jacobson Manzella. They've gotten out of their lane a bunch of times in this big debate that we've had, and in other debates too. And I'm like, man, and they get offended. They really get offended when I call them normal, intelligent golf teaching pros, and that's what I am. I'm of normal intelligence. I'm not a PhD. And just because you have a PhD doesn't mean you're smart. But doggone it, the cream rises to the top, and the garbage PhDs, they don't get a lot of attention. But the guys that are bringing the heat, like Sasho and Kwan, and Puddleman, he's not a PhD, but those guys bring the heat. They bring the stats. Paul Wood, Eric Hendrickson, all those guys at Ping, they look at data, they collect it correctly, then they interpret it, and they build better golf clubs. They give that data to Sasho. He looks at the kinetics of the golf swing. He gives that to golf teachers, and we do with it what we want to do with it. And I learn something every week from Sasho, from stuff that he tells me, that data that he's gotten from Ping and data that he's gotten from his lab. And I'm happy to try to be the the conduit between Sasho and my students and people that want to listen to what I have to say about the golf swing, because I know I'm getting good information from him. And I'm not, bless his heart, Homer Kelly, his heart was in the right place. It was all made up jargon and didn't have a lot of scientific principles to it. And Sasha McKenzie is coming from, hey man, a force is a force, a torque is a torque. The club did this would had to happen to the club. You do with that what you want to do with it. And it's been great. I've really enjoyed having a guy like him mentor me. I mean, he's younger than I am, but he's been a scientific golf swing mentor And without him, I don't know where I would be as far as my understanding of the golf swing. And there's a handful of other guys too, but Sasho is easily out in front, and he's a good friend, and I really appreciate what he's done for the golf business, for the golf instruction business, and for me personally.
Yeah, I got to get him back on, and I'm going to do something that it's Golf 360 because it encompasses everything with golf. I mean, I got you on your instructors. Doc Sasho is on, Doc McCabe, guys who've played. I mean, CEOs, Marines. I've had a whole bunch of people. I got some pretty interesting people coming on that are outside the golf world but tied to it somehow. But I'm going to come up with call it the 180, the 180 short 180. That's going to be basically a 3-minute podcast for guys like Sasho, who's, I mean, for me to get him on for an hour and a half was an act of God, right? For him to, and for like Como, who's so busy, I'm going to say, okay, I need 180 seconds. I need 3 minutes. We'll do 3 questions.
Oh, 180 seconds. Okay,
yes.
gotcha.
So that's where the 180. It's half of the 360, but it's 3-minute podcast. It's like, hey guys, give me 3 minutes.
Well, at the height of me and Manzella going back and forth, and Jacobs going back and forth about the negative hands couple, Manzella had I don't know whether it was a podcast or a thing, he called it Manzella 360 podcast, kind of similar to yours. And so I came up with Finney 720. That's my handle on Instagram, which I never use, but Finney 720. I'm twice as good as you. So I'm just trying to rub them the wrong way. But Brian and I, we were friends, really good friends for such a long time, and we've talked a couple of times here recently about my son. And we grew up. He was friends with my family, and I know one day that we'll
it's going to come around again.
Speaking terms,
got a feeling about that.
And I've reached out a bunch over the last 5 years. I've reached out a bunch, and he's kind of been he's not been the one to soften, and hey, I understand, and one day we'll get back together, and it'll be fine. But I hope, at least, and if he listens to this, which he probably won't, I'm always there to talk to him about, because that's what we did back in the day. We would talk 5-10 times a day, and most of the time we were talking about the golf swing, and those are good times. We were learning together, and he's older than me, and he led me down some paths that were good. He led me down some paths that were bad, and we learned from our own mistakes, and it was a lot of fun, talking about the golf swing. I was the one that called Stephen Nesbitt, so I kind of got Stephen Nesbitt involved with Manzella and Jacobs in a roundabout way. It's kind of neat to see how things have gone. Back to what I said earlier, I wish Stephen Nesbitt and Sasha and Kwong would sit down, because we would be a lot further along on the understanding the mechanics of the golf swing if Dr. Nesbitt was allowed out of his office or whatever. He's just left Lafayette College, where he's a professor for a long time, and so maybe Jacobs will have him explaining this stuff a little bit more as we move forward, and we can benefit from that, because he's a super, super smart guy, and I think that'll be nothing but good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, so we've blown through 2.5 hours plus. Let me, yeah. And I knew I get the only knock on the podcast from some friends is like, well, it's too long, I can't listen to it. It's like, okay, listen to it over a course of time. I can't ask people to come on and cram a lifetime of info in 30 minutes or less, but I knew we would talk a long time, and I could probably talk to you another hour minimum, but we'll do it again. But before we go, I've got to do the emergency 9, I call it, the rapid fire. Okay. If you got a few more minutes. I know your son came home.
Sure.
All right, so Ryder Cup's next week. If you were on the Ryder Cup team and you had your walk-up song to the first hole, what would it be?
Ooh, man, I'm a classic rock kind of guy.
Me too.
So I would probably go. I like Jimi Hendrix, "Slight Return," Voodoo Child, "Slight Return." I like that, especially the about 30 seconds in, the guitar about 30 seconds in. I like that. I like that song.
All right, cool. That's a good one. If you walked into McDonald's and could order one thing, what would it be?
Man, I go there way too often. Got one right by the house. Probably, double cheeseburger. I'd go with that.
All right.
Bad for you. But I like it.
If there was an 8-foot putt, and if you made it, you got $1 million, but if you missed, you could never use your phone again, Do you take the putt?
Never use my phone again. To like talk to people.
Talk,
Jeez.
apps, you name
8-foot
it.
putt, $1 million, and I can use my phone after I.
Yes, if you make it, you get $1 million and you keep your
it.
phone. If you miss it, you can never use your phone again. And you don't obviously you don't get the $1 million.
Yeah, I'd try. I'd hit the putt to try to win the $1 million and be able to use my phone. If I missed it and couldn't use my phone, I guess I would probably have to get a lawyer, and I'd probably use a laptop and use FaceTime and Zoom calls a little bit more, and some workaround where I could communicate with my family and friends. But yeah, I'd hit the putt, and hopefully I'd make it, and then everything would be great.
Everything would be good.
Yeah.
Best training aid you've ever used?
Is TrackMan a training aid?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah, TrackMan by leaps and bounds.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's see.
I don't use a lot of props and alignment rods and basic stuff. I don't use a lot of teaching aids, to be honest. Use a mirror. I like using a mirror.
Yeah, I mean, with the advent of tech, a lot of training aids have fallen to the wayside. I know Martin Chuck's done really well, and his stuff's doing
Martin's a great guy.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Let's see. Caddyshack, Tin Cup, or Happy Gilmore?
Caddyshack by $1 million. I went to the what's it, Tin Cup? Yeah, I went to that premiere. They premiered it in Louisville, Kentucky, where I am, right before the PGA Championship in 1996 at Valhalla. I was an assistant at Valhalla at the time, so I went to the premiere. They're like, "Hey, come to the premiere." I'm like, "This is cool," and we're getting in there. My girlfriend and I, we go through like the little red carpet. We're like walking in. I'm like, "This is awesome!" And they take us around the corner, and we go to the movie theater. It's packed, but there's a bunch of normal people like me, and Kevin Costner and all the other people are in the other theater, where all the VIPs were. So I got a little bit of a bait and switch there, but so Tin Cup got a special spot in my heart. But Caddyshack, way better movie.
Let's see here. Most used app on your phone?
Oh, geez. Probably my TrackMan app and my TrackMan camera. I use that quite a bit. And then, I social media wise, I'm probably, if you ask my wife, on Twitter way too much. But I sort of, I use Twitter. I follow a lot of different, news and sports and stuff like that. And I'm a big college football fan, big professional New Orleans Saints and LSU Tigers. I'm a huge fan of those teams. So I use Twitter a lot, and I follow a lot of those sites that have articles about those sports teams.
Yeah,
so
you catch it quick on Twitter, social media, the news. You get it right away.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Let's see here. In your opinion, best swing in golf?
Like currently or ever?
But let's say current. Well, let's do one of each. We'll do a 1A and B.
Yeah,
current and then ever.
Sepp Straka right now, and he's got a very how do you describe it? Flattish, brittle type of swing, but boy, I like it. Sepp Straka, look it up. He's on and off the big tour and Korn Ferry tour. I like his swing a lot. I like Louis Oosthuizen's swing. All time, boy. Tom Watson. I love his golf swing. Kind of like Seve. Early Seve.
Yes, that was. It's just enjoyable to watch the fluidness and the power.
And what's not to like about what's not to like about Tiger Woods? I know that's like 6 answers, but current
which
player
one?
off the chart would be Sepp Straka, really good golf swing, and then all time I'd probably go with Tom Watson. I love his ball striking. His ball striking, maybe not underrated, but I think it's underrated. He stiffed more iron shots than, especially when he got older. I mean, between 35 and 50, he stiffed more iron shots than Ben Hogan. I mean, that guy stiffed it all the time.
When he hit that shot on 18 at the British Open, as soon as he hit it, I said he did it. He just won.
Yeah.
And he just carried it about a yard or two too far.
If that ball had just grabbed a little bit more, that would have 59 years old. That was great. I was pulling for him hard
I think
like everybody
everybody
else.
was.
Yes.
Two more. Your go-to drink on the golf course.
Yeah. I love, I went to LSU. We're kind of famous for tailgating. I love to have a beer, but I, I'm more of a soft drink guy. People that know me, but we'll go to the golf show and the Ping guys. We usually go to dinner one night with the Ping guys, and Paul Wood loves his draft beer, and he's kind of a aficionado, and he kind of teaches me through what beers to try. So, but if I had a go-to drink, it would be probably a Coca-Cola or a Dr. Pepper.
I was going to say it's got to be Dr. Pepper being from
Yeah,
Louisiana.
that's true. That's true.
And the last one, in your opinion, the GOAT for in golf.
The greatest of all time.
Uh-huh.
I tell you, I never thought I would ever see anybody surpass Jack. And I would normally knee jerk, I'd say Jack Nicklaus. But Tiger, boy, he's done some amazing things with the U.S. juniors, U.S. amateurs, obviously the majors. But I think if you pressed me, I'd say Jack Nicklaus.
Mm-hmm. It's
Yep.
about 50-50
Yeah.
on this show. Yep.
What's the other? Is the other 50 Tiger, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'd probably go with Jack. And maybe that's because I'm older and I got to see him play a little bit more. But
I think it goes by era.
Yeah.
The guys who are, let's say, under 40 mostly will say Tiger. Guys who are 40 and plus will usually say Nicklaus.
So I played at LSU, and we played against Ohio State in college, and Gary Nicklaus actually came on a recruiting visit to LSU, but he ended up going to Ohio State, and he was a couple years behind me, and I got paired with Gary Nicklaus twice my entire time, probably 2 years that we overlapped. I got paired with him twice. Both times, Jack Nicklaus flew in on a helicopter right before the tee time, watched him play, watched his son play 18 holes, which I was in his group, and then left right after that. He never came, and Gary was in tournaments that I was in a bunch of other times, but he never came. But the two times I happened to get paired with Gary, Jack Nicklaus watched us play 18 holes, and that was maybe one of my biggest thrills of my golfing career. I got to chat with him, shake it. He asked me questions about what was going on.
Yeah, he's very personable.
And super, super nice guy. He knew my dad. My dad was a sports writer, and he knew my dad, but I never really brought that up, although he would have been very nice and generous with what he said about my dad, because my dad was around forever. But he super nice guy, and it was pretty cool to walk. I was playing McGregor Nicklaus irons the first round that we played together, and I said, "Thank you, Mr. Nicklaus, for designing these clubs for me." And he just chuckled, and that was a great thing to look back on.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So, what do you got? Anything coming up? You got any lectures? You talking anywhere? Presenting?
No. I tell you, I really would love to just to kind of do what I've told you that I'd like to do. I'd like to get the word out about the good science, quote unquote, behind the golf swing, and I'd love to work my way into maybe being able to teach at different PGA sections, and talk about the golf swing and answer questions, and do what we did tonight. Talk about the golf swing, because I could do it forever. Not that I'm always right, but I think I have something to offer to younger PGA pros and teaching pros, and I'd love to get on that circuit. But I think my edge and my debating over the years maybe has taken me off some of the lists. They think that maybe I'd be a little bit too harsh, but I think, have I done a nice job of not bashing anybody tonight? I mean, I think I've done a pretty good job of being pretty,
well, I mean, I
politically
picked it
correct.
Well, you have a way with words, and you know what you're talking about. And if
Well,
it comes out strong, well, then hey,
right.
then prove me wrong, right? There's nothing wrong with being a little aggressive in it.
Exactly, and I'm going to go to hopefully the top 100 thing in November in Pinehurst. And, I love seeing the talks there, and I love getting to talk. The talks in between the talks are the best, talking to your peers and friends that are teaching golf, researching golf. I I put on one about 4 years ago at the club with Sasha and Chris and Joe Mayo. And I need to do something again like that. COVID has obviously taken in person these things, to a ground, what am I trying to say? We don't do them anymore. But as soon as we can kind of get back to normal, quote unquote, I'd like to do some more seminars in Louisville where I bring in some people like Sasha, maybe Sasha again, and do more stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the Zoom calls, which I'd love to send you the links and maybe get people to donate to Golf Science,
Sure.
$20, get offered it. So I don't have any of those on plan right now, but hopefully I can put some more of those together too, and just kind of just push forward, try to get more understanding out to more people. So I don't have anything on the horizon at the moment, but if I do, I'll definitely let you know about those.
And what's your social media stuff? Where can people follow you?
Yeah, it's I think it's is it at Finney Golf on Twitter, which is where I do a lot of my posting. The Facebook pages that Nick Chertok started, Golf Teaching Professionals and Golf Biomechanics. I used to post there a lot more often than I do now. Twitter, I don't get censored at all. As far as my golf takes, but you only have 240 characters, so it's hard to be real in depth. But the Facebook, I'll get on there a bunch. But yeah, the easiest way to find me and contact me would be through the Twitter. As Ed Orgeron, the LSU coach, would say, the Twitter machine. You can find me on the Twitter machine at Finney Golf.
And you got a website?
I do, but it's not. I really just have my rates and a few pictures of students up, so it's not really all that informative. I do have a Vimeo page. You can just search.
Okay, I'll be sure to. All those things will be linked in the summary, and people can check it out and follow you, and be sure to follow you.
Yes,
because you always got some pretty good stuff to talk about.
Well, I appreciate that, and what I appreciate. It was a long talk, but I like. Putting my thoughts into words. It's hard sometimes, and I feel like things like this, it makes me think about what I believe in. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share with you. And I hope maybe I inspire one or two people out there to maybe take a deeper look into the mechanics of the golf swing. And if anybody wants to ever send me a note and ask me a question, I'll try to give you my best answer. I don't always have the right answer, but I certainly can try. And if I don't know, I'll tell you I don't know.
Well, so, I'm now that I'm doing more of this stuff, I'm going to try to talk to the powers to be, see if I can just go to that, hang out in the lobby at the Golf 100 up at Pinehurst, or just to do, like I said, the 180, the Golf 180, the 3 minute, and just talk to a bunch of people. And hey, I've got the show. Do you want to come on? 3 minutes. I'll ask you 3 questions, and maybe just get some more people to just have a list of questions, right? And just pick randomly.
The guy at Golf Magazine, Luke Kerdanine, LKD on Twitter, I think, is he sort of organizes it. And maybe you can contact him and see if you couldn't attend. Sitting out in the hallway and doing some of those 3 minute things with the guys as they come out would be a great way to do it. And you can probably walk in the talks and listen to that too. But I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Have you been to the open forum that Como and Chertok and?
No, I the only thing Mike? I've been to recently, meaning let's say the last 3 to 5 years, was Andrew's coach camp.
Oh yeah, coach camp's great too.
Because it's here, and we live 2 miles from each other.
Oh, okay.
Here in Bluffton, and to go over to Savannah, I just drive every morning. It's pretty simple.
That's nice.
But getting involved again and getting out to these things, and just meeting the people you follow, and I'd love to meet you at whatever event, if I can get up there to Pinehurst, and I'll let you know. But it'd be just fun to sit down and just bullshit a little more.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man.
For lack of a better term.
I love talking about this stuff, so I could go on forever. And but I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to put out there what I believe in, and it's like I said, it's a great opportunity for me to put it into words. So I appreciate you.
Anytime you want to come on, just let me know, and I'm sure I'll be reaching out again to have you back.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot, man.
Awesome.
I really do appreciate it.
You have a great night, Michael.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's Paradigm, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.